Well, ahoy there, land-lubbin' podcast listeners, and welcome to a brand new episode of your absolute favorite horror movie review and general bullshittery podcast in this world and the next. Why, it's Dad and Lovely here with your best buds in all the world. It's me, your quarantine pal, Uncle Ben.
Yar, it's me, Salty Steve.
Oh, Salty Steve. Avast!
Yeah.
Salty
Steve has no nation nor city.
You know, Steve, I know that everybody, of course, is obviously sick of hearing the obvious and hearing people talk about how, hey, have you noticed how we're all quarantined right now? Yeah.
Yeah.
I know they are. I don't
want
to go on at length about it, but one thing that I just do want to say at the front of this episode is that everybody that is working in the medical community right now is a fucking hero. I think that we have a lot of listeners I know that work in the medical field, and they are showing balls of brass beyond anything I will ever put up in the public eye, man. They are, I think, to be revered like fucking 9/11 first responders, because this isn't just a day. This is months on end that they are showing true grit in the face of mortal peril. So I just want to take a second here and just say thank you so much to everyone in our medical community for doing what a lot of us absolutely could never do. I would be much too terrified to ever do something like this. So you guys are above and beyond showing your worth.
Here's the thing you have to do. Calling people heroes can mean a lot, but it can also do another thing, which is make people think they've done enough. If you say everyone's a hero and you think you've done enough, no. If they're heroes, you need to insist they get paid. You need to vote for people who will keep them out of danger, because the current administration is keeping them very much in danger.
Yeah, very much.
So they're heroes, but also we need to fight for them. And it's not just a simple like they need more supplies. They also need to be getting paid more.
Oh yeah, because this is taking a toll for sure.
It's definitely taking a toll on them. So like, really, they're heroes. Also fight. Figure out what you can do for them, especially if you're just home. I mean, if you're home and you're doing nothing, figure out how you can help some of these medical professionals, because it's rough. It's real tough for them. So just, bolster them however you can.
Yeah, no doubt, man. And hopefully we can bolster them with a chuckle and a horror movie review and all that jazz. So that's what we're here to do. This is our way of helping fight the good fight.
The good fight. Isn't that on? That's on CBS. This episode brought to you by The Good Fight. I don't know why we talk in this voice.
Yeah, but you do, obviously.
Yeah.
How you been doing this week, Steve? You going stir crazy or anything? You just living the dream?
No, I am not going stir crazy, but I am going a little crazy, because there's the fact that I normally don't do a ton anyway is making it so that like this is fine, but I'm also realizing how unfine it is. Like that this is how I normally live. Like it isn't
normal,
good.
Right?
Yeah,
this drives people crazy, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so like just seeing everybody else having such a tough time with it, I'm like, oh right, like that. I might need to get out more once this is over. Like,
dude, I'm telling you what though, man. I was thinking about this the other day, and I was like, dude, imagine that all of this was going on in like the early 90s or 80s or something like that, like pre-internet, pre-streaming, like where you'd have millions of people locked into their homes with like 3 channels of network television that went off at 11. Could you imagine the mass hysteria?
I remember, because I was a night owl even as a kid. I remember summers, like I remember when television used to go off.
Yeah,
like
totally.
It would
National
show the
anthem.
Flag and then stop. Yeah,
like Poltergeist. Yeah.
Yes. And yeah, it was hard to, I mean, what do? What would you, I just can't even imagine that, Ben. I cannot imagine what it would have been like if this had happened in the 80s.
I know, right? Ugh. It's crazy. So, could be worse.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a great point. It could be worse.
Yeah, dude. No, I've been having actually a really fucking busy week, man. I've been busier than a old 3-legged dog trying to bury a bone on a frozen pond.
Busier than a two-peckered goat in mating season.
That's right, man. That busy, dude. A lot of people, people are stuck at home. They're watching guitar videos. They're wanting to improve their guitar playing, get some Skype lessons and stuff. And I'm happy to lay it on them, man. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's been great just to, see some unfamiliar and familiar faces and give some people something to do during these trying times. So I'm very grateful to be extremely fucking busy. But yeah, it's been good, man. The time has been whizzing by, and I have had time to watch a couple things while I'm winding down after a night of teaching those 16th note shred licks. You want to hear about it?
Yeah, tell me about it. What you been watching?
I'm going to start off with one that we've talked about many times on the show, but I just now watched. It's a little pellicula that just came out called Knives Out.
Knives Out.
Knives Out. It's got a lot of folks in it. You got Laurie Strode in there. You got James Bond. You got that mom from Hereditary.
That's right.
All
playing
kinds
a little
of
different character.
Slightly different. Slightly different, man. It was a really enjoyable flick. Like, I had heard so much hype from people just saying, like, it's one of the best movies of the year, and I went into it with pretty high hopes, and I gotta say, it mostly lived up to them. I don't know if it was, like, quite the 10 out of 10 that people sold me. Yeah. But I still really, really enjoyed it, man.
I don't know that it's a 10 out of 10 either, but I loved it. Like, I think people loved it so much because it came out near the end of the year, and it had you know how 2019, like right now, we probably think back fondly on 2019, but it kind of sucked as a year.
It did.
and Knives Out came along, and it was just fun, and I think people were just like, yes, okay, great. And it was like fun for people who can't entirely shut their brains off, as well as fun for people who can.
Yeah, totally, man.
I think it was just one of those movies where it was like, oh, finally, yes, we can just relax for a second.
Yeah, and enjoy a fun story, right?
Yeah.
That also has some substance to it. Like, I like that it does have the whole, like, Clue-like murder mystery, whodunit kind of angle, but at the same time...
in a way different perspective.
In a way different way, yeah, because it kind of tells you about 2/3 of the way through the movie, or maybe a third of the way through the movie, what happened.
Yeah, a third of the way. Yeah, a third of the way through the movie, you know exactly what happened, but you don't know all of it.
Yeah, totally. It's a different mystery to unravel after that.
Yeah, and it does have the obviously political messages. I mean, there's the little Nazi kid masturbating in the bathroom and all that sort of stuff. Like it's got political messages, but it also is just a fun mystery to try to figure out, and Captain America's in it. So
yeah,
that's
exactly.
fun.
Playing a very different kind of role than I'm used to seeing him, you know?
Yeah, he's getting more back to his not another teen movie roots.
Yeah. Yeah, this one was it was a blast, and I gotta say, like, overall my complaints are pretty minor. Like, there's stuff in there where I feel like it probably could have been trimmed down. It also probably
trimmed down.
Was it really?
I mean, there were so many moments watching it through, because I just rewatched it too with Emily after the Friday night streaming chat, and there were so many moments I saw where it was like, how did we get to here? Like the story is consistent, but like there are moments where it's like you see Daniel Craig has his tie stuffed in his shirt, which is normally something someone does when they're going to be very active, but he's not. And
that's
then
what
he
I thought,
just pulls
is he's
it out.
Fight somebody or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Emily pointed out, like, at one point, like, Chris Evans is, it's at the end where they're explaining everything that happened, and Chris Evans is standing up, then it cuts away from him for a second, cuts back, and he's sitting down.
Oh.
And it's like, I mean, I know that seems minor, but because so much attention was paid in the movie, I'm pretty sure that there was there were a number of things in that final sort of explanation sequence that were cut for time, or cut because they cut that bit of the story throughout or whatever.
Yeah, because obviously in that kind of story, they're paying a lot of close attention to continuity and stuff. So it feels like that's less of a continuity error and more of they cut something. Yeah,
and I mean, but two things. Was I correct? Daniel Craig's Southern accent is awesome.
It's awesome. I mean, I already knew that from Logan Lucky, because his accent in Logan Lucky is fucking perfect, but it's so good in this too.
Yeah. And then, two, how cute is the main character?
20 out of 10.
She's adorable. Love her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really fun flick, man. I did have a good time watching it. I'm sure that I'll watch it again. We also, the past, like, maybe week or two, and, we've been doing this for a little while here, but I wanted to wait till I at least finished a season of it before I talked about it on the show. we've started watching through something that Kate watched while it was on the air, but is completely new to me. I had never watched the fucking Sopranos before, and we just finished the first season the other day. Oh, Papa the Boopy!
Forget about it.
Dude, it's fucking great. I get it. I totally get it.
I also watched it while it was on, but then fell off, so I haven't seen the last season.
Oh, okay.
And then I know that people hate the final episode. And it's kind of one of those things where it's one of the greatest shows I've ever seen. And if it's going to end in disappointment, I almost don't want to finish it.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Like, whenever that final episode aired, I just happened to, like, walk into somebody's house and they were watching it. And I'd never seen The Sopranos before, so I didn't know what was going on. But I did watch the very last scene of the very last episode. So I know what happens.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm kind of cool with it. To me, the fun part is finding out, well, how did it get to this point, you know?
Right. Yeah. I think I maybe avoided some disappointment that, like, if I do sit and watch it now, it really will just be like, oh, that makes sense. Because, like, there's not the anticipation building up over, like, all these seasons. Like, and I already know what happens. Like, to just see how it finally gets to that bit in the last season, probably worth it.
Yeah, man.
Maybe I'll finish it.
I was really worried it would be very dated, because obviously you're talking about the first real big serialized drama show to come out on HBO that really made HBO into the TV machine that it became later on with shows like Game of Thrones and shit like that.
Right.
Because, you got to think, this had no prior model, save for maybe soap operas. Like, soap operas are probably the closest thing you could think of a serialized story, but not really taken to the level of storytelling and character development that some of those later shows would do, obviously. So I was really worried that it was going to feel super dated. And I guess, the clothes, the fashion, and music and stuff like that kind of do. But the storytelling and character development and stuff is so good that it's kind of crazy. It's one of those things where it's just like, did a time traveler make this? Because it's such a well-developed premise for a show,
Maybe a time traveler did make it.
That would explain
it. Yeah.
But yeah, I loved it. We're fixing to start the second season, and I'm already really excited to get into that. So I've been jamming on that. And also, I'll tell you what, man, if you want yourself a feel-good flick in these trying times, I'm going to lay one on you.
What you got?
We watched this last night. It was one that Kate had heard of, and I didn't know anything about. I watched this before I watched The Lighthouse again for the podcast, which was kind of a weird cycle of moods, I guess. But it's a movie called Troop Zero. Have you heard of this movie?
No.
Okay, so it's got Jim Gaffigan in it. It's got Viola Davis.
Okay.
And a lot of incredible kid actors, including the girl that played like young Tanya Harding and young Carol Danvers in those movies. Okay. She's the main character in it. It is essentially... Honestly, it's basically Little Miss Sunshine, but set in late 70s Georgia, small town southern Georgia, and it's about kind of like a Girl Scout troop kind of thing and a competition. It has that same like feel good, underdog band of miscreants kind of feel that Little Miss Sunshine does, but in a very different kind of way. It's so perfectly southern, like you know how it is, man. When you grow up in the South and you watch a movie that's set in the South, but it's not really how it is here. You're just kind of like, oh man, this sucks. This isn't what it's really like around here,
Yeah.
But whenever you watch a movie that actually does feel like what the South feels like, it's so great. And this really totally has that feel, man. Whoever made this movie really must have grown up somewhere around here because it's so fantastic. Really, really good
Troop
movie.
Zero,
man.
you said?
I enjoyed it a lot. Yeah, Troop Zero.
Okay. I'll have to check that out.
I had a really good time watching that one, man. So highly, highly recommend, especially if you just want something that's kind of a feel-good, simple flick, man.
Sweet.
What have you been watching on, man? Did you guys do a little streaming chat last week?
We did. On Friday night, we watched Slumber Party Massacre 2.
Ooh.
I threw a little music on it.
That's pretty good. It's a musical movie.
It's a musical movie, and it has a guy with a completely insane guitar that makes no sense.
I love it already. Are you kidding?
Yeah, it's bad, but it's like ridiculous, absurd bad and fun because of that.
So the first one we reviewed on the show a really long time ago, and
Yeah.
I think we went on at length about a lot of the very intentional misogynistic overtones and sexualization stuff in that movie and how it was really played up for the viewer by a feminist writer that put that movie together. Does this movie have any of that, or is it just like fucking fun?
It's written and directed by a woman, but no, it completely abandons any of that. Basically, I mean, the band. There's a band in it, and they're all girls. So I guess that's a girl power sort of thing in 1988, I think is when it came out. Okay. But it really abandons a lot of what happens in the first. And I think they were going for a sort of knockoff of Nightmare on Elm Street. Because like he kind of is in her dreams and stuff, and I would say even the guitar itself kind of looks like it was a rip-off a bit of Freddy Krueger. Like, I don't know why they abandoned what they had before, but it's fun, at least. It's stupid. It's like stringing together a number of bad music videos, but...
I like that, too.
Yeah.
That was probably perfect to do, though, for just, a Friday stream and chat where everybody's just kind of chit-chatting and not really watching the movie. Yeah,
I think we found the perfect movies for Friday nights are 70 to 80 minutes long, and this one was 71.
Perfection. Just barely a movie.
Just barely a movie.
Diet, man. You guys having some drinks while you're doing that, or what?
Yeah, there was some drinking going on. I've noticed actually a few other podcasts are doing these streaming chats and drinking now, and I'm glad that people have something to do. This is fun.
Yeah, dude. Man, one thing that really struck me this week too is like we've got several friends who are, during lockdown and stuff like this, pregnant, so they can't get fucked up at all. Can you imagine how terrible that would be?
just raw dogging the pandemic.
It's got to be awful. It's got to be awful, man. Yeah, I've definitely been finding myself doing a bit of drinking while we've been in the old quarantine here, man. Thank God I live so close to a liquor store and can stay stocked up at all times.
Yeah, we've got a few liquor stores around us too that definitely have seen some patronage. I've drank a little bit more in the past week than I had been, and I don't regret it, but it's no fun, honestly. After a while,
moment on the lips, forever on the hips, Steve.
Yeah, well, there's that, and it does affect working out the next day, and I really love my workouts, but like I don't know, it's just like taking a depressant during a depressing time is...
Well, when you put it that way, it doesn't sound very fun.
I mean, like right now, it's all like we're just coping and stuff, and I get that, but like after a while, it becomes just, you get drunk and you're not avoiding anything. You're only thinking about that thing because you have this depressant running through your system reminding you of all the shitty things.
Hey, we're not talking about the Lighthouse yet, man. Knock it off. Knock it off. Save it for later. Save it for out there, man. Save it for the field.
So I'm just saying, be sure to take days where you don't drink. Don't drink every day. It's going to catch up to you.
So, Steve, it's kind of funny. You were mentioning before we started recording the podcast something that you watched that another friend of mine, my main man, Junkyard Joe, just told me about, which is those documentaries about wrestling on Vice. Yeah. You were watching the same thing, weren't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I watched the Dark Side of the Ring. It's Vice's documentary series about wrestling. They're in season 2, and it started with the Chris Benoit story.
Wow, so a good feel-good pick-me-up for these dark times.
Yeah. And it's so like, because full honesty, and I've been fully honest about this in the past, Chris Benoit was one of the best wrestlers of all time and was one of my favorites.
Yeah.
He and Eddie Guerrero, I think, were not only amazing together, but they were able to transition from WCW to WWF in a way that other wrestlers were not able to. And that's because they were so talented in the ring that they could not be like put down in any way by the management. So they went out there and they fucking won championships and they were badasses and it was awesome. And then Eddie died, and Eddie was Chris's best friend, and Chris was suffering from CTE and then spiraled into depression.
What is CTE?
Chronic traumatic encephalopathy. It's what football players.
Lots of head injuries and stuff.
Yeah. His brain was riddled with all sorts of badness because
Is it just me, or did it take us way too long to make a diagnosis for that as an actual problem? Is that not fucking crazy?
Yeah, it used to be just like punch drunk was what they would call it. Like
yeah,
like he's taking too many punches to the head. It just makes you wacky and silly or whatever. But no, it makes you not be able to control your emotions and eventually do things that you would never have done. Like,
well, yeah, dude. I mean, your brain
kill
is
your
just
family.
a soft sponge being, knocked around inside of your brain pan there, dude. That's not going to lead to anything good.
Yeah, I mean, in the documentary show series, they go into that, and it's great. Like they're really in depth and show why like the WWE had to change, like why they had to like eliminate chair shots to the head and all these other things. I mean,
really?
Yeah, they're like it's a much more sanitized thing now. But people like, I think it does a good job though. Like if you're the type of person who says like, you listen to our podcast and you hear us talk about wrestling and you're like, oh my god, I don't even fucking care. Like seriously, give this a viewing. I think it'll give you an appreciation for one, why fans of wrestling get upset when people say wrestling's fake, because what you're diminishing is what's happening, like the amazing athletic prowess and storytelling and things that are going on, and the fact that they are getting hurt, like in reality. Like people think that they're using some sort of chairs that are made out of like aluminum, like a can or something that easily bends. They're using real fucking chairs.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
those chairs
that's going to do
hurt.
damage.
Yeah,
even if it's coming and it's planned out, it doesn't mean that it doesn't fucking pack a wallop.
Yeah,
when
Chris
Sabu
Jericho
throws it at your face.
Right, Chris Jericho talks about it. He talks about like how you take a chair shot, and it really is just gritting your teeth and getting hit in the head by a chair. Like
Jesus,
it's not some fancy thing they like just know exactly how to get hit. No, you get hit and it rattles your brain, and that's what happens. So
take a bump.
Yeah, so I appreciated that. I appreciated that they went in depth on these things, and I also appreciate that the WWE knows that those things are super entertaining, but you can't do them anymore. Once you know what it's doing to people's brains, like you really got to be very judicious about big bumps and chair shots and stuff like that.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's good that they're taking a responsible angle at it and showing you it's like, this is the damage this can do to people, Because I think a lot of people, like you said, totally overlook that because it's, quote, fake,
Yeah. I mean, it's staged. It's a work. It's not real, but there are real people involved and real physical violence occurring.
Wow. Well, it sounds like that's a good watch, man.
It's depressing. It's depressing as hell. I'm not gonna tell you that you're gonna watch it and not cry most of the time. It's a depressing hour and a half, but it's amazing. It's really well done.
Well, maybe you watch that, then you watch Troop Zero for a little.
There you go.
That's the way to go. And then you just go completely batshit bonkers and watch the subject of today's podcast, which is, of course, The Lighthouse from last year, 2019. And this is a buck wild, rip-roaring, crazy fucking movie, Steve.
Yeah, it is.
And I think just even thinking about how wild it gets makes me just a little bit parched. I think I need something to wet my whistle, dude.
My whistle
it's a good thing. We had a non-personal beer drop where I dropped you half of these beers that our fans and stuff have sent us. You picked them up off the doorstep there.
Yeah.
That way we can long distance Get a pull.
Get us a pull.
This
What
is
are we
called
getting
an
a pull
eye.
of?
It's an eye pull, I think is what it's called whenever it's long distance over the internet.
Yeah.
Eye pull. So this right here is one that was sent to us by our good buddy Jeff Rupert from upstate New York. This is a K2 Bros Brewing. He sent us many of their beers, and they have all been so remarkably unique and fantastic. This is their second anniversary edition, barrel-aged Imperial Mole Stout. Mole, mole, mole.
Mole, mole. Now, when I opened this up just now, Ben, not only did a waft of all sorts of flavors and smells and whatnot come at me, but the can also ejaculated. So
Oh no, look out.
I got a good bit of it on my desk, but I've wiped it up now. So we're good.
Lick it up. Now this promises that this is a barrel-aged Imperial Oatmeal Stout that was brewed with chocolate, nutmeg, cinnamon, and habanero peppers. Holy moly!
Jesus.
Yeah, this
I'm
is a
excited.
12%er too, so this is a big old beer. I'm glad this is a
12%.
one and done affair. Oh shit, yeah, it's foaming up like a damn banshee for me too, Steve. I also got some of that on my desk. I'm gonna need a medic. Medic, clean up. Thank you, my lovely assistant, my wife.
Oh, good.
Brought me.
I thought it
a
might be
towel
that
to clean
no
this up.
good Fuzzbead.
Ah, Fuzzbead, dude. You know Fuzzbead's locked up. He's being lazy as shit too. He's not doing a thing.
Dude, this
Thank
smells.
you, darling.
It smells.
Oh, it smells
like
good.
so
You can
much
smell
of
the
stuff.
cinnamon.
You smell the cinnamon.
Uh-huh.
You can smell that it's gonna be a little bit hot.
Yeah, you
Ooh.
can smell a little bit of that floral
Yeah.
note from the habanero, right?
Yeah.
Ooh,
All right.
man, I look forward
I'm
to
gonna
getting
try
into this.
out.
It does seem very effervescent, hence the fact that it just kind of jazzed all over both of our desks
Yeah.
here. Seems nice and foamy. That'll probably lighten it up a little bit too, since it is a 12%er. This is a non-see-throughable beer. It is, but it's not just like
motor oil.
black.
No,
Yeah,
but-
it's like a very dark brown, like chocolate syrup.
yeah,
color.
like you don't need to change your oil just yet, but you're getting there.
Whoa. That
Yeah,
is
it's-
so good.
Yeah, and the spice does hit. I'm feeling it on my lips for sure.
Yeah, dude. It's like after you kind of swallow it, you kind of feel it, little back of the throat
Ooh.
burn, man. But dude, the
Ooh.
cinnamon and the chocolate and
That's
the
so
nutmeg,
nice. Yeah.
it tastes like a great mole sauce or like a nice Mexican chocolate
Yeah, yeah.
cake or something like
Mhm.
that. Kind of tastes like a Mexican mocha. You ever have a good Mexican mocha?
I have not.
Dude, it's a thing of glory. You can get them iced too. That's what I usually
This-
do over at Coffee and Chocolate in Knoxville, Tennessee.
This reminds me of another mole stout that we had. Oh, damn it. Who was it
This
from?
is
It
better,
was a Tennessee
though.
brewer. This one, I think, is better. I remember that one having a lot of burn to it. And this one
You're
has a
talking
lot-
about the one that we did in the beer video on the YouTube
Yeah, yeah.
channel, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that was that Tailgate did that?
I think so, yeah. Tailgate.
It was,
yeah, I remember
that thing was
that
shockingly
burning
hot.
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. This isn't
one-
just like a total heat fest. This is a flavor bomb right here.
Yeah. And you can
Dude.
smell. You can just smell so much off of it. What a great beer.
Yeah. And the aftertaste is fantastic too. The aftertaste has a nice like raisiny, kind of like a cinnamon raisin bread kind of aftertaste, or like
Yeah.
a cinnamon raisin bagel aftertaste,
Yeah. Cinnamon
but also
raisin.
spicy.
But yeah, I'm taking it very slow because each sip is all habanero. Like, you're getting that heat.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna savor this one right here just because every little sip has so much fucking flavor. Damn, that is awesome. Thank you so much, Jeff, for sending us
Yeah, thanks,
this
Jeff.
delectable brew. All right, Steve, the subject of our show today, once again, is The Lighthouse, which is a great story about two seafaring men just bonding and sharing good times while they're together on a lighthouse there. But this movie is riddled with subtext of myth and lore and history and all kinds of good stuff. So as we were talking about the planning stages of this episode, man, we really had a hard time narrowing down what we're going to do for the Preview Palace segment before we do the movie review. We always like to kind of, pluck something from the movie, a little theme or maybe a character or something in there, and tug at that thread a little bit with a fun list or quiz. But we were frankly just so overwhelmed with choices for what to do for this movie that we came up with something a little bit different, Steve. So let's go ahead and slip on in to the Preview Palace.
Welcome to the Preview Palace.
Ooh, sea shanty edition. And let's talk about the best topics that we could have done for a Preview Palace about the Lighthouse.
I like this meta.
Kind of meta.
Yeah.
All right, Steve, let's start off with one of the obvious things that we could have gone for here. When you start thinking about all these seafaring men, these hardened, grizzly guys living on the salt and the land and the rocks, you obviously start thinking, best sea shanties, am I right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean...
Oh, man. I consulted my volume of, now that's what I call sea shanties for some inspiration here.
Ben, I'm telling you right now, when you sent me that, anytime I think of sea shanties now, all I think of is Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, because when you're out on your ship, your crew will sing sea shanties, and you can, like, they're also hidden sea shanties you can find and unlock. But like, it's just awesome to be sailing out there. Maybe you're going a whaling and your crew's just singing a sea shanty.
Oh man, times are good. Times are good. I think my favorite one, just for reference.
Yeah,
I'm a big blow the man down kind of guy.
Oh yeah,
I love the piratey feel. I love the homoerotic tinges that it has.
Blow the man, yeah.
If that doesn't get you riled up, I don't think nothing will.
That's true. If blowing the man doesn't get you riled up, now,
not
Ben,
much is gonna do it.
I mean, this movie has it, so it made me think of it. What are the best farts in horror movies?
Oh man, that's a tough one right there. That is definitely a tough one. Because I mean,
this
thinking
one,
about that, and I'm
sure.
like, it's got to have some horror comedies. Definitely got to have some good fart land.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I know that the what are the Scream knockoffs? What are those? Fuck.
Oh, like Scary Movie?
Scary Movie, yeah. Scary Movie definitely has a ton of fart jokes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a topic we could have explored at length, for sure.
I feel like there were farts somewhere along in the Nightmare on Elm Street movies and in the Friday the 13th movies.
That seems likely. Yeah, that seems like something that maybe would have happened in the third one, maybe with Shelley or somebody, right?
Right. But, I mean, no fart will ever equal just the first fart in this movie, which is the first, I guess, communication between these two.
Dude, that's what I was gonna say. Like, there's farts before there's fucking dialogue in this movie.
But the fart tells you something. It does.
It does. It really sets up just how that character dynamic is gonna work.
Yep.
I also noticed the second time around watching this that, like, whenever Robert Pattinson walks into that bedroom that they're sharing, Willem Dafoe is standing behind that post, hidden from the camera, pissing into a pot.
Yep.
You see that his pee stream is going to the right. So that means that Robert Pattinson is positioned behind him. So that first fart, he basically is just farting in his face.
Yeah.
Because he's sitting down. He's like at ass level. The movie starts with him getting his face farted upon.
And this, I just find it so funny because it reminds me of my uncle. Like, I remember so many times I would stay over with my cousins and we'd just sleep on the floor after watching horror movies. And he'd wake up on the couch and he'd be going to the bathroom and he would fart and he would say, "There's a kiss for you," and then go pee.
Who do you think the first like grown ass man that figured out that kids love farting?
Yeah,
that figured that out. Do you think he came back home and he's like, "Honey, the weirdest thing happened. I farted in front of the kids and they loved it." Who figured this out first?
I'm imagining it's the 1950s because that's like the only way I can see that playing out.
Oh, I think it's a caveman, dude. I think it goes way back.
Well, yeah, definitely it happened way back. But I'm just imagining a dude dressed almost like Fred Rogers with a pipe, and he's like, "Honey, the strangest thing. I accidentally tooted the other day, and the children found it a delight."
They were delighted. Farts are always funny.
They are true.
Always funny. All right, Steve, let me ask you a topic that this movie explores that I think we could have got into: best alcohol alternatives.
Yep, turpentine and honey, number one.
Goes down so smooth.
Yeah,
man. We saw some other things explored in like The Master.
The Master, yeah, he distills the methanol out of the torpedo juice, which is I looked that up because I was reading about the turpentine thing. I looked that up and they talked to a guy, a moonshiner, about the different scenes in The Master and the stuff he's doing, and a lot of them, the Moonshiner was like, "Oh yeah, you can get alcohol doing that." So like,
holy cow, man!
There you go.
Where there's a will, there's a way, right?
Yep.
Another one that I think that would have been a great intro for this episode: weirdest whack-off scene.
Most of them are weird, unless it's like, unless the name of it is "Dude Jerks Off." Then it's usually like, oh, there's a dude jerking
prepared for
off.
that.
Unprepared, yeah.
But you know what? Whenever I start thinking about, especially in the genre of horror, weirdest whack-off scenes, actually both of them are female-based in my mind.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. First one that I thought about was that scene in Black Swan, where I think Natalie Portman is kind of like, she's kind of DJing a little bit.
Yeah.
And she like, I think her mom is in the room or something weird, or like there's a picture of her mom. I just remember her like diddling and looking at her mom, and it was really weird. Real weird.
Yeah, Black Swan's one we have to do. That's a strange movie.
Yeah. And also, too, if you think back to when we did our high tension episode.
Oh, yeah.
She's listening to that like hard reggae rap.
Terrible reggae rap. Yeah.
And having herself a little moment of alone time there.
Yeah, that's right. I've forgotten about that. Well,
there's probably more we could explore, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure. It doesn't. I think is it Friday the 13th Part 4 where there's the guy who keeps calling Crispin Glover a dead fuck. I'm pretty sure he jerks off at some point.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Sounds like something he'd do.
Yeah, it does.
Steve, what do you think it would have been like if we would have chosen the topic best mermaids?
I mean, the real problem with that is other than Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah, obviously the best mermaid.
There's never really been a good representation of mermaids in horror movies. Like, I want a good mermaid horror movie.
Yeah, it's true, because there is a lot that you could play around with there. The forbidden sexuality, the isolated nature of men at sea, and so forth.
I think this one is the best representation of a mermaid in a horror movie, but she's just barely a part of it. I mean, if we're saying best mermaids, though, like, who do we go with? Because, like, I do love The Little Mermaid, but that story is
What about
gross.
Splash?
Oh, there you go. That's less gross by far.
And of course, probably the most easily observable topic, and the thing that Kate and I both felt after we watched this movie the other night: worst movies to watch during a quarantine. Like
this one
locked in a room with another person for weeks on end.
The Shining.
Quarantine. I mean, name any of them.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of the funny thing to me, though, dude, is like, whenever all this shit started going down, you and I, of course, had the discussion after many fans suggested it. It's like, oh, with this stuff going on, you guys should do Quarantine. You guys should do Outbreak, whatever. And we were like, low-hanging fruit. We're not going to play into that. You know, it's
not doing that.
That's too obvious. We're not going to do a Quarantine movie. Then we did a Quarantine movie.
That we didn't know was a quarantine movie.
Yeah, we kind of walked into it by accident, frankly. That was not at all the design of like, hey, we should do a movie about people going crazy while they're locked in a room with each other for weeks on end.
Well, I didn't know what the Lighthouse was about, but now that I know, sorry, guys. Didn't want to remind you.
We just kind of walked full on into that pothole right there, didn't we?
But it does. I think it's a good time because it's early. You know, what are we in? Week 2 officially. I think we've been quarantined now for 4 episodes.
Yeah, I think it's been about a month for us.
Yeah, where we took it seriously, but most people didn't really take it seriously until maybe the last couple weeks. So we're in week 2 of it. Maybe now is the time to be thinking specifically about it because it's happening, and you need to think like, okay, I shouldn't be mad at everything my husband or wife or child does. Like, it's just because we're stir crazy. Let's not start drinking turpentine.
So there you go, guys. Some of the ideas that we could have explored in the intro of this movie, none of which we actually explored.
That's the best Preview Palace we've ever done because
it probably is.
It makes no sense.
All killer, no filler, man.
Here are the things we could have talked about.
All right, Steve, so this is a movie that came out last year, and of course this was on every horror top movies of the year list ever. But this is one that we both were just way too fucking busy last year to actually get out
I just didn't have the time.
2019 was so fucking crazy busy for me, man.
Yeah.
And so I never got to watch this one, man. So whenever we decided to do this for the show, I was so excited, but it was also the kind of thing that we had to choose when we could do it, because you knew going into it, with this being a Robert Eggers movie, there was going to be a lot of fucking research to do.
Yeah, and there was. And yeah, I had to be able to put that much time into it because it deserves it. Because he put that much time into it. Like a lot of the times where I put a whole lot of effort into research, it's really possible the writer or director or no one involved even considered any of these things. But in this case, I truly believe Robert Eggers' research interest goes exactly in line with a lot of the stuff I'll be talking about, and I wish I knew everything else he researched.
Yeah, because that's the thing, is like, this is only Dude's second movie. His first one, of course, being The Witch, which is one of our absolute favorites. Check out our episode on that. It's an early episode, but we do some really good deep diving into the history and lore that's hidden in that movie.
He did. Like, we know for sure he did the research, so...
Right, yeah. So going into it with the level of research that we did for that movie and all the symbolism and hidden things that we saw in there, going into this movie, I kind of knew everything would be deliberate. It's kind of like watching a Kubrick movie in a way, where you're like, that's that way for a reason. That person is wearing that color tie to say something, you know?
He thought about it. He wanted it that particular way, and there's a reason in his head. So
he wants it that way.
Tell me why.
Like, I was watching it with a really critical eye, just knowing, okay, everything here is a deliberate choice, you know?
Yeah.
And it didn't disappoint. I mean, as much as I love The Witch, I went into this with very, very, very high hopes.
Yeah.
And I still, when the credits started rolling, I was like, that was fucking awesome. Absolutely one of the best of 2019, without a doubt. Not bearing the lead here. Fucking loved it.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. But I see that it is maybe a bit less clear than The Witch. I think it was easier for me to pull out of The Witch some meaning, some very, I think, essential themes and stuff than it was here. But that is not to say that has anything to do with it being less researched or less well written.
No.
I think basically what I'll be getting at is that The Witch was a great, like, female empowerment tale written by a man who did his best to understand the struggle, but he was an outside observer, so he was able to put black and white to it. But this is about masculinity, and specifically toxic masculinity. And I think because he's a man, it's harder to give an objective view of it, and so you end up reveling in a lot of the things that you're trying to work out. So it seems less clear throughout, and a lot more ambiguous, and a lot harder to say exactly what he's getting at, because I think he's experienced it. So he's having trouble being as clear as he was with The Witch.
Well, and I think too, another angle that makes this maybe a little bit more indecipherable than what we saw in The Witch is the fact that both of these movies, in The Witch more at the forefront and this more in the subtext, are dealing with religion and religious figures.
Right.
Of course, The Witch being primarily based in Christianity, which is which is something that we both have experience in, obviously. Right. This movie being really steeped very much in Greek and Roman mythology, which of course we call it mythology, but come on, guys, it used to be religion.
Yeah, it was religion.
Used to be just as real as Christianity is to a lot of people now. So with this movie, it's basically dealing with a religion that has been dead for eons. So I think it's less relatable for us in a lot of ways because we've never practiced that religion, so to speak,
And there's also like the concept of the religion of the sea. Like sailors had their own beliefs and things and attributions to various gods because they were often from different nations with different cultures and different mythologies and things. Like, so sailors would have so many different things running through their head alongside the Bible, like all these various mythologies and you know, also just superstitions and just whatever,
ghost stories,
folk
stuff they
beliefs,
picked
ghost
up
stories.
off on islands and shit like this. Yeah.
So that mishmash has to exist when you're talking about these guys in a lighthouse in 1890. You're going to be talking about people who, you know, one of them says he's a former sea captain. We don't know if that's true, but he says he is. And he seems to have a ton of experience and talks the talk. And then we have another guy who's just sort of being introduced into this world. This is his first time taking care of a lighthouse. He used to work, you know, cutting logs and stuff. So, like, he's being introduced into this whole different culture, mythology, religion, whatever. And he's also being introduced to it all by a guy who we're not sure we can trust.
I'm going to say the learning curve is steep.
Very steep. Yeah.
It's an apprenticeship you don't really want to take on.
No. It does not look fun at all.
No, man.
No.
And of course, you know, with the same amount of research that Robert Eggers did when he was making The Witch, where he sourced a lot of the dialogue and stuff from journal entries and stuff like this of early American settlers during the witch hysteria and stuff like this that was going on. He did just as much research into this movie and painstakingly made it insanely accurate, even going down to the point of clearly doing a lot of research into what the average work day and the workflow of being a lighthouse tender at this time was, or a wiki as they called it.
Yeah.
And I learned about a lot of this stuff through a podcast that my wife, Kate, recommended to me. And I listened to the first part of it. It was a two-parter, actually. Let me pull it up here so I can tell you what the name of it was, because it's a really cool show. The podcast is called Astonishing Legends, and I listened to their episode that was titled Mystery of the Flannan Isles Lighthouse Part 1, which is a cool kind of like, you know, lighthouse ghost story. There's some lighthouse tenders that disappeared. Nobody knew why. But the really fascinating thing about that podcast is that they went into depth about that lighthouse tender's guidebook that we see a couple times in the movie, and about like what the average lives of, you know, lighthouse workers were like, and how they all had to strictly obey the head lighthouse commander guy, which is Willem Dafoe in this movie, regardless of how crazy or whatever it is that he said. It's clear that he really wrote this movie with those guidelines and stuff in mind to make it as historically accurate as possible, as well as a lot of the dialogue and slang and stuff that these guys are using.
Oh yeah, that's cool. I didn't know about that. That he did research, like more than just that. He also researched like journals of lighthouse keepers and stuff to get some of their like manner, like ways of speaking.
Yeah.
So like some of the lines come directly from lighthouse keepers from the times. That's really cool. I didn't know about that though.
Wow.
It's also inspired by an actual, like slightly inspired by an actual like real incident at Small's Lighthouse in Wales.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there were these two lighthouse keepers, Thomas Howell and Thomas Griffith. In 1801.
Oh, well, that's familiar naming.
Yeah. So basically, Thomas Griffith, the older of the two, died in a freak accident, and Thomas Howell was afraid to bury him at sea because he thought that people would think he murdered him.
Oh, okay.
So instead, he built a makeshift wooden box and like lashed him to the outside shelf. Now you have to understand, this lighthouse was on like 9 pillars. It's very different than the lighthouse we see here, where it was on a very tiny island that floods a lot, and so they're up on these pillars on this real small sort of, actually rickety in ways because it got moved by the wind a lot. Somehow this lasted for 80 years, but it got moved by the wind a lot, and it was just a real small sort of shack. So like he lashes him to the outside of the shack, and then wind starts blowing and just blows the box completely to pieces. And apparently the arm of the corpse would just hit the window from the wind. And so, like, the guy started going crazy, thinking that the guy was beckoning him to his death and stuff. It's an insane thing that actually ended up changing the lighthouse keeper laws in Britain, because they only had 2 lighthouse keepers up to that point. So they were like, all right, 2's not enough. You could easily go crazy. Things could get out of hand. One might murder the other. One might be suspected of murdering the other. We need 3. So they started having 3 lighthouse keepers instead of just 2. I don't know that entirely fixes all of those issues. Having 1 extra person in a small area probably doesn't make it much better, but at least then you have a witness if one murders the other.
Well, and at least also, too, you'd have a tiebreaker for arguments that arise, or you know, choices that have to be made, or whatever.
That is true.
An odd number works better for that kind of thing. Wow, damn, man. Yeah, and he even went as far as to source out, like, film and stuff that hadn't been used in a damn 100 years or whatever to shoot this thing with, and use period authentic lenses and all this crap, right?
Yeah, Panavision hooked him up with a lot of cool stuff. He was also inspired by a lot of literature from the 19th century, specifically sea literature like The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, which is referenced throughout. Specifically in The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, the mariner kills an albatross, and at first the crew believes that, you know, he's done something wrong because he's killed this albatross, but then the wind changes, and then they think everything's good, and then it gets entirely worse, and everybody but him dies. So
that's literally what happens in this. He kills the seabird, the wind changes, it's going to be pickup day, and then everything goes to shit. Yeah. So that's on the nose. On the nose, yeah. Then we also have Melville's Moby Dick. I mean, other than Melville's he wrote several travelogues that were about him on boats, but Moby Dick is a completely fictional account. And we get the Captain Ahab reference made in the movie by Robert Pattinson's character. They're both named Thomas, so I'm just going to refer to them as Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. Yeah, let's make that easier. It'll get way too mixed up. But the references to Moby Dick actually made me go back to Moby Dick and reminded me that Robert Eggers is a modern day Herman Melville. The thing that, like, I've talked about Moby Dick before, and people really need to recognize why Moby Dick is considered a classic and wasn't considered a classic when it came out. It's weird as hell. It starts with 18 pages of quotes about whales. It's research. Kind of a nutty way to start a book. Yeah, it's research. It's Melville's research. But he was, I think he was just showing, like, look, where, like, all this stuff I found, it's really cool. But this movie, I think, is very much inspired by Moby Dick, and I wanted to read just some of the lines from the opening paragraph that I think really capture what this movie is about. Nice. So this is, call me Ishmael, the first lines. This is Ishmael talking. And he says, whenever I find myself growing grim about the mouth, whenever it is a damp, drizzly November in my soul, whenever I find myself involuntarily pausing before coffin warehouses and bringing up the rear of every funeral I meet, and especially whenever my hypos mean depression, especially whenever my hypos get such an upper hand of me that it requires a strong moral principle to prevent me from deliberately stepping into the street and methodically knocking people's hats off,
Then I account it high time to get to sea as soon as I can. This is my substitute for pistol and ball.
Wow, this is the thing that keeps me from going nuts and killing myself.
Yep, getting out to sea. So,
wow,
like the idea of this character Ishmael and Robert Pattinson's character, Ishmael is untrustworthy in a lot of ways. Like, we don't know much about him. We don't even know if his name is Ishmael. Like,
I was gonna say, even call me Ishmael.
Yeah, exactly.
Could indicate that that's not my name.
Exactly. So it's like there's a lot of cloudiness to him, and he's a social isolate. He is disconnected from society, and the only thing stopping him from killing himself most of the time is going out to sea. And so that like gives us a little bit of one Thomas and a little bit of the other Thomas.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Beyond that, though, we also got Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island. And then specifically, I wanted to point this out because this is somebody, you don't hear her name a lot, but I actually read her in college. Sarah Orne Jewett. She's a New England writer.
Okay.
She, a lot of her characters had this, like, she was able to really capture the way people speak, like vernacular. Like, if you read her main accent in comparison to Stephen King's, she writes it so much clearer. Like, you can hear it in your head way better the way she writes it. Like, she's
more like don't go down that road.
Yeah.
More like that, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Like, but Robert Eggers and Max Eggers, his brother who wrote this, they used a lot of lines directly from her seaman and sea captain characters from various novels and short stories she wrote.
Wow.
Because she was so capable of capturing just the way people spoke.
And I think it's really got to be addressed that so much of the influence and inspiration for this movie too comes from old Greek mythology and stuff. Yeah. And I think a lot of it deals with the struggle of man and authority, man and the sea, all kinds of things that are explored here. Like, to me, I was kind of suspecting through the whole movie that there was definitely sort of tones of this, but then whenever you get to the very last shot and it's Robert Pattinson stranded on a rock with his liver being eaten by a bird, it's like, oh, this is the Prometheus story.
Right. Exactly.
The man who stole fire, who stole light from the gods to benefit humanity and was punished for it.
Exactly. Okay, so we have to address one thing Robert Eggers said. He says that the entire movie, up until those last few frames where we see him getting his liver eaten by gulls, the entire movie is from Robert Pattinson's perspective.
That's interesting. That's interesting to know.
Then, at that exact moment, he says it's the director's perspective. So that is the director showing us what he wants us to see at the end.
Well, and the director essentially being the God's eye view. Yeah,
exactly. So
interesting. So that means even too, whenever Pattinson was having those visions, I guess you'd have to say, since it's all from his perspective of what he imagined Defoe was doing up top in the lighthouse, where he was like shirtless and gazing at the light and talking sweet to it and stuff.
Yeah,
that was all Pattinson's imagination, I guess.
Maybe, or at
least what he thought was going on.
Well, see, because like what I would say is like specifically the one moment where we can sort of differentiate between what is close to reality and what isn't reality is when he goes up there and he's hearing him and he's wondering what's happening, and then some ooze drops down on him, and then he sees like a octopus tentacle.
Yeah, there's like a weird Japanese hentai tentacle porn moment going on up there.
Now,
I guess.
Now, what I will say happened in that moment, or at least how I read it, is Willem Dafoe was up there jerking off, and he came, and his cum dropped down, and he thought it was some sort of ooze because he's going crazy. So we don't get that. We don't get to see all that. We only get some of the... Okay, hold on. I just spilt this entire beer.
Oh, shit.
Fuck.
Oh, no, it was so good, too. I say we just leave this in the episode. Give it some radio drama, dude. Play it up, man. Is there sheer hysteria going on right now?
Right now, okay, Ben, I am on the
War of the World
street.
style. Give me War of the
right
World.
Here, I'm down on the scene, and it looks to me like a brown liquid has spilled. A brown liquid. It has a spicy sort of smell to it, and a little bit sweet. I'm drawn in by the brown liquid, Ben. Oh, I think I'm just gonna drink up some of this. Oh my god, I'm turning into a monster!
Oh, the humanity! Tragedy strikes the podcast.
Tragedy just struck, everybody. My desk is full of shit because I have books all over the place, and I just knocked over that awesome beer.
Oh, man.
All over my desk. I got maybe like an eighth of it left. So
I'd be licking that desk up, man, because this is some good ass beer.
Yeah, well, at least my office is gonna smell like it for a while.
That's true. At least there is that. Oh, sorrow, man.
All right. So anyway, I forgot what I was talking about.
We were talking about some of the viewpoints and stuff, and how there's the tentacles up top. And all that jazz.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that there are times where, you know, we're not sure what's happening. Like, you know, we're not sure if it's Willem Dafoe gaslighting him or whatnot. But there are also the times where it's like, well, this isn't real. Like, he's not a sea creature. And
yeah, an octopus
mermaids
didn't
aren't
show
real.
up upstairs.
Yeah. So, I mean, it makes it real hard because of Robert Eggers saying that this is from Pattinson's point of view. It makes it real hard then to know what is real and what isn't real.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
that actually makes the movie more readable. It makes it more comprehensible because if you're not sure what is real and what isn't real, you can just assume that none of it's real. Except for the last moment where he's on the beach getting his liver eaten by a gull.
Yeah.
We know that happened.
Like, there has to be some sort of thing that happened in between after he actually goes up to the top of the lighthouse and then when we see him on the beach. Because, like, last thing that we saw, as far as we know, is that he went up top to the lighthouse. He saw the light. He went crazy. He was still wearing all of his clothes. He fell down the stairs. And then the next thing, he's naked on a rock on the beach.
Yep.
Like, how did you get from point A to point Q there?
He's also missing his right hand. Did you notice that?
No.
Yeah, he's missing his right hand, which is not a part of the Prometheus myth that I found, but I think there's meaning to it for sure.
I didn't notice that was in the final movie. Like, I read a thing where it said in the original script he was supposed to reach into the light of the lighthouse and have his hand burnt off, but they cut that.
They cut that, but they still have him handless.
Yeah, I didn't
end.
notice that.
Yeah, I have some theories about that go into my major theory that he may very well be alone and in fact not even on an island.
Fight Club in it.
Sort of. Like, it's his own journey in his head as he fights alcoholism. Like, basically. It could be seen that way. Though, there are more interesting ways to see it. And I think the Prometheus myth is central to this for sure.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how do you think that plays into this? Because I didn't really get much time to read up on any of it.
All right, so I tried to just condense it down to what I think are the relevant moments, but this is basically the Prometheus myth. Zeus took the knowledge of fire from man because he was mad. You know how Zeus gets mad. And,
like he does.
Yeah, and Prometheus, who's a trickster figure, he stole it back and restored it to humanity. And this enraged Zeus, like it does.
Like it does. He can't be having that.
Yeah, he then had Hephaestus fashion the first woman out of clay and sent her to live with mankind. That woman was Pandora. Hephaestus was then cast from the heavens by Hera for being shriveled of foot. Hephaestus is gonna come back. The shriveled of foot bit, I think, applies when we're talking about him in comparison to Willem Dafoe.
Okay.
Because Willem Dafoe claims to have a foot injury. Yeah. Anyway, so he fell into the ocean, and he was raised by Thetis, who's a goddess of water and a sea nymph, and a daughter of Nereus. Anyway, more about this. For the crime of stealing fire, Prometheus was bound by chains, and an eagle was sent to eat his liver every day, and it grew back every night.
Is that with or without fava beans and a nice Chianti?
Now, I think eagles prefer lima beans.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Sophisticated choice.
That's true, and that's why the only bird that Hannibal Lecter will hang out with is the eagle. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I did not know that. Wow.
And birds want to hang out with him. It's a big thing for birds to hang out with Hannibal Lecter.
yeah. They get the selfies with him and all that, yeah.
Okay, so Prometheus was eventually freed from that torment by Heracles. So, like, the way that Prometheus has been, all that comes from Hesiod, like early, I think like 5th century BC. We're getting that. He's become this like figure though that was real important in the Romantic movement in the early 19th century, where basically he represents this rebellious figure and is connected to like the French Revolution, connected to Jesus, connected to Milton's Satan character from Paradise Lost, like connected to all these different things where basically, and this also comes from Plato, the idea that Prometheus is this source of creative power. And he's often presented in contrast to his brother Epimetheus, who is the source of natural instincts. Now, this gets kind of played up between Thomas and Thomas, Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe, where Willem Dafoe asks him early on if he's slow, and it seems like in a lot of ways they're playing out the Prometheus Epimetheus duality
dynamic.
That dynamic where he has this natural instinct toward the sea, and he sees Prometheus, Robert Pattinson, as slow because he's thinking about things. He's putting thought into everything, and he's constantly analyzing everything that's going on. Whereas Willem Dafoe is more attuned to it all. It's all just natural to him.
Okay, yeah.
So I think some of that plays out. We also have the connections of creative powers or creative people rebelling against the confines of modern society.
Yeah, or any kind of authority figure and so forth.
And that's Prometheus is just like a metaphor for that. He's this perfect representative of creativity. I would say we also have to talk about Proteus. Because Proteus was a Greek prophetic sea god. He was one of like a number of sea gods and goddess, or sea gods or titans were called Old Man of the Sea, but he's very specifically often called Old Man of the Sea. He's the god of elusive sea change.
Wow.
And the interesting thing about him is he is prophetic, as Willem Dafoe is. He prophesies directly to Robert Pattinson, essentially damning him to his fate. But also, one thing you have to know about Proteus is that he answers only to those who are capable of capturing him. Which the end of this movie is that. Like,
yeah, it seems that way when you put it that way.
Yeah, Robert Pattinson leashes him and then makes him do it's the first time that he answers to him. So there's those connections, and also I think it's possible that Willem Dafoe is a Hephaestus character somewhat, because he seems to be of the sea, but also godly in a separate way, like, because Hephaestus was living in, living amongst the gods before he was cast out into the sea. So it's like there's so much mythology wrapped up in this, and I know there are other smaller things that I could mention, but I don't think it's worth going into every single mythological point that he was trying to make. But there's so much here in this movie.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and of course there's name drops of Neptune and other sea gods and stuff like that. And to me too, dude, like, a lot of this movie to me reads very much like a Greek tragedy in a lot of ways, in that you have this guy, Robert Pattinson, who is stranded on this rock in the middle of nothing, just like we are stranded here on Earth, right?
Yeah.
He's trapped there, in his case, with his god figure, his authority, which is Willem Dafoe.
Mm-hmm.
And very much kind of in the practice of the later Roman Hellenistic period, they started crafting the gods and the images of their gods and stuff very much like human beings. They were flawed. The Hellenistic era had flawed gods. They were ones that were jealous and vengeful and lustful and had all of these human-like qualities.
Zeus was always being a dick, always raping people. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, man. So that was very much kind of the way that they characterized their gods and stuff at that time. And the way that I see so much of this movie is that he's stranded on this rock all alone, Pattinson that is, with this god figure, very much the god living atop Mount Olympus,
Right.
Because even though they're stranded on this rock together, they are separated. Their schedules are totally different. Pattinson's not allowed to go up there to the Holy of Holies, the Lighthouse.
Right.
Which Dafoe very greedily keeps. It's mine. He says that so many times in this movie. It's mine to keep. You're not to be up there. This is my space. This wisdom, this power, whatever, is mine. And meanwhile, while he's also, stranded on this rock, also his very creator is the one that is throwing every temptation known to man at him and punishing him for indulging in them, whether that be the lustful object of the mermaid statue, whether that be the temptation of alcohol, which he's constantly plying him with. I mean, he's the one that's drinking first,
right,
and tempting him with booze the whole time.
Yeah, he doesn't have a drink until the night before their last day, before they're supposed to be picked up, which is about 49 minutes into the movie.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like he's constantly plying him with all of these vices. It's like he's stranded here on this rock. His authority figure is demanding that he be a good boy and follow orders, while also providing him with everything that he needs to break every rule possible. That's kind of just like classic
Satan.
Greek tragedy, Satan, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, he plays out definitely as a Greek tragic figure, as he does have that like full on constant temptation, but also the supply of guilt afterwards.
Sure.
Which, I mean, you could even see that as the Jesus figure. Like he fits into so many molds that it becomes very hard for me, considering how often you could say Willem Dafoe is this type and Robert Pattinson is this type, and then they can switch, it seems, at times where suddenly now Robert Pattinson is this type, and it that's why I kind of feel like maybe one of the simplest readings and easiest ways of looking at this is that they are the same person, that it's his own internal guilt and feelings of rage, and that Willem Dafoe
and his need to answer to a higher power too.
Right. Willem Dafoe like represents the way he sees himself, and he's this, he feels that he's this experienced and capable person, but in reality, that's all lies. Like And that's why I think, constantly we could find that he's questioning everything Willem Dafoe says, because it doesn't add up.
Yeah, and also rebelling against a lot of the things that he says too, Yeah. Well, and also too, like, again, that plays into the religious angle from so many standpoints where, Willem Dafoe, the God figure, says that the lamp needs more oil. So
right.
Pattinson follows orders. He brings that whole barrel of oil up those stairs and is then kind of chastised for being like, oh no, you only needed to bring this much. You'll start a fire. Like, his God figure was not there to even ask a question to, but he's getting punished for doing his best to follow orders.
Which, that's some straight up Old Testament shit. I mean, this is...
That's some straight Old Testament shit, exactly.
Yeah. Moses goes up, God tells him, love God, love your fellow man. He takes it down. They don't like that. Comes back with 10 commandments. They don't like that. Eventually you get Levitical law where everything is prescribed down to the step. Like, it is, I think it's playing out very much. Yes, a religious, like, even Christian God. But there's so much, like, every time you try to nail it down, I think that's where this movie is just so slippery.
Because it really is.
Even if you could say it's this way, you could also see him very much as a devil figure. And in fact, you could see that duality in him. Like, he goes from this, like, seemingly real fun and knowledgeable, but also ball-busting sort of father figure to this absolute asshole who's potentially gaslighting him and, like, treating him like shit and driving him insane.
Oh yeah, absolutely so. And I want to talk more about that too. But another thing that I see in this movie, as far as the list of temptations go, is I think the temptation of homosexuality, the homoerotic slant of this movie. I think is very heavy, and I think that's also played out as another temptation for Robert Pattinson. But of course, that also gets into the whole kind of Oedipus complex kind of shit too, which again goes back to Greek and Roman myth.
That is definitely there, and I think first we should deal with the homoeroticism and then get to the Oedipal complex, because the homoeroticism is, I read that people read that into it, and after watching it the first time I was like, I don't know that it's so much homoerotic as homosocial. I think, like, a lot of times people just see men getting close and they're like, it's gay, right? But there is one particular moment that I could not identify with. All of the moments between them seem to me to be normal, everyday dude shit, like two men who are friends and get drunk together, until he wants to kiss him.
He leans in so close. It almost happens, and then it turns into a game of fisticuffs.
Yeah, and then
like, let's be manly. Let's be manly.
Let's not fuck, let's fight. Yeah. Like, even the dancing, I just thought, like, that could be a real sweet moment between two people who just haven't had human contact for a while. Like,
right, but it goes way beyond that.
It goes beyond that. Yeah.
The second time that I watched it, I really picked up on how many times Willem Dafoe talks about how pretty Pattinson is.
Yeah,
several
pretty as a
times
picture.
Refers to him. Several times refers to how pretty. Like, he says something about how pretty his eyes are, or something like that in there too. They squabble like an old married couple.
They do. Yeah,
like, Dafoe gets upset that he doesn't like his cooking and shit like this.
I would fuck a steak. That he doesn't get upset that he doesn't like his cooking. He gets jealous when he says, "I would fuck a steak."
Yeah.
Like that. Then he's, "Oh, you don't like my cooking." It's like it becomes a married couple squabble. Like, he's suddenly jealous because he wants to stick his dick in a steak. He doesn't even say he wants to eat a steak. He says he wants to fuck a steak. Which just really revs up that there's some sort of relationship beyond just a homosociality going on here. There is a desire. And it's not one way, we find, because Robert Pattinson is the one who tries to kiss him. Like, all the stuff leading up to that moment that I would say is homoerotic comes from Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
So, but that is, as you said, the temptation. He is tempting him toward it. And then right when he's about to fall to that temptation, he stops himself and turns it into a playful game of beat the shit out of each other. Like, he doesn't fully fall to that, but could it be that when he's fucking the mermaid, like, who is he thinking of? Like,
okay, let's talk. Yes, I'm glad you brought up the mermaid, because let's talk about that. That's one of those things that to me was very telling about the guilt, I think, that Pattinson was feeling about the temptation of his homosexuality.
Yeah.
Or even if it is just, I don't know any better thing to call it other than like convenience homosexuality, which is something I guess you could say is akin to like straight guys go into prison and they end up fucking a guy because humans need sexual contact.
Yeah, it's
whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it's pretty common. I mean, if you do read Moby Dick, and again, I'm highly recommending it. If you do read Moby Dick, nobody who reads it will ever think that Ishmael and Queequeg aren't gay lovers. Like,
it's about a big white dick, dude. Come on.
Yeah, it's true. But like, one of the earliest scenes in the book is Ishmael meeting Queequeg and then them sleeping together in a bed. Like, I mean, that is not entirely unnormal in mid 19th century America, but the way it's described gets much more homoerotic than it would be expected if it was just two friends sharing a bed.
Wow.
So
interesting.
I think, like, again, Robert Eggers is our modern Herman Melville. Like, I think he's exploring some of those same things where it's like, when you're out to sea, you pick a buddy and he's your buddy.
Right.
Like, convenient. I guess it's not, because like homosexuality is supposed to designate like an actual like inclination entirely towards having sex with people of the same sex. And this seems more like sexual fluidity, where like they're cool with it, whatever, like anything's fine.
Yeah. Well, but you know, with the mermaid tie-in, as far as like that becomes Pattinson's object of sexual desire and sexual frustration too later on, as he breaks the statue and tries to stab it with a knife.
Right.
To me, that really speaks of the fact. Sorry.
I was gonna say, I mean, a knife is a very phallic object, and
obviously,
like
and dude, this movie is full of knives and keyholes and very phallic and yonic objects. The entire fucking movie, very obviously. I mean, dude, the Lighthouse is a big dick. It's about two guys in a big dick with each other. Yeah,
I mean, that's what Robert Eggers said. He said nothing good happens when two men are alone in a giant phallus. Like,
yeah, exactly. But you know, to me, the mermaid statue and then the mermaid itself clearly is just a figment of Pattinson's imagination. Defoe never interacts with it. The mermaid never interacts with the story whatsoever. The mermaid never swims up to shore and sings him a song. Like, it's entirely a fictionalized thing in Pattinson's head. And the thing that I kind of got about it is that he is so much more comfortable with I don't know what the word that I'm looking for is, putting his sexual feelings and his sexual frustrations on a mythical creature that doesn't even exist, like a mermaid, than he is just accepting the fact that he could have sex with this guy that he's trapped on this rock with for weeks on end.
Absolutely.
He would much rather pursue something that's not even real, but it is a woman. That is his way of defending his masculinity or his, you know, straight sexuality, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Okay, so in a book called The Mermaid and the Minotaur, Dorothy Dinnerstein argues that human-animal hybrids like mermaids and minotaurs are supposed to convey the emergent understanding of ancient human beings that we're both we're one with and different from animals. And what she really gets at is the embrace of our humanity and the embrace of our animality. And I think that's why a mermaid was picked as the thing he fucks, because she is this embracing of animality. Like his animal desire is to have sex with Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
And so the thing he fucks is this representation of that embracing of the animal desire.
Wow, yeah. So in other words, it's not just that he was fantasizing about fucking a woman. It was this animal woman.
Yeah, exactly. So like he could have just fantasized a woman. Like, why,
yeah, totally. Obviously.
Why would he have to fantasize a very clear image of a shark vagina on a woman?
Yeah. Boy,
Like,
that shit was weird.
Yeah,
That shit was so weird.
Yeah, it's a strange choice. But, like, again, it's because he's not interested in a woman. He's interested in being able to embrace his animal desire and have sex with Willem Dafoe. That's why he breaks down crying after he jerks off that one time when he's just staring at it and then like having...
So weird, man.
Yeah, like he is all of it's falling apart. And it seems to me that like the way near the end he sees Willem Dafoe as the guy that he let die in the logging accident.
Yeah, Ephraim or whatever.
Yeah, Ephraim, the guy... The name he says is his, Ephraim Winslow.
Yeah.
When we see that guy is pretty.
Yeah,
like,
he is. He's like this beautiful blonde guy.
Right.
Kind of reminds me of, what's his name in Fight Club?
Yes. Jared Leto in Fight Club.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, he is pretty, and I feel like he says things like, I could have put my hook in the back of his head.
That's what I was going to say, dude. He snuck up behind him and hooked him. It's like, come on, man. This is kind of obvious what's happening here.
Yeah. So I think, he was trying to escape his gay lover that he let die. Or
just escape the temptation of having sex with a man. Yeah, and went to Penis Island with God.
Yeah, went to Penis Island with God.
Pin Island.
and fucked a mermaid. So, yeah.
God, what a movie.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think the choice of the mermaid image is interesting because I think it also carries with it the Fiji mermaid connection of, P.T. Barnum's exaggerations and lies.
Yeah.
Like, the Scrimshaw mermaid, I have to assume, was made by Willem Dafoe. I'm just assuming. I mean,
I guess you're talking about the little talisman kind of thing.
Yeah. I'm assuming, but maybe it was brought by. I just don't believe there was a guy there before. Like,
I wonder about that too. Yeah.
Or
the whole
if there
thing
was,
about the previous
did he do the
caretaker
same
or whatever.
thing? Yeah. I just
and two. Isn't there something just so vaguely, or maybe obviously sexual about the fact that Pattinson pulls out that sexual totem out of a hole in the bed with wadding in the bed that looks like pubes.
It's hair, yeah. It's a hair mattress. That was pretty normal. Yeah.
I mean, it's just
it looks like
obviously sexual.
Yeah, it's obviously sexual. And my assumption was that whoever was there before was fucking the bed.
I would guess. And also, too, there's that shot where Pattinson kind of spies in through the shingles on Dafoe, and he looks like he's kind of like doing a little bed humping too.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's there's so much in this to indicate, not only self-pleasure, but a desire for pleasure from someone of the same sex.
Yeah.
That it may seem foolish for me to say that I think this movie is more about alcoholism than any of that.
Okay, yeah. So you think that's kind of the big angle, huh?
I think alcoholism is the big angle, and the only way for that to work is with my theory that there's only one person and there's not an actual physical location, that this is all happening within his head.
It makes you wonder, honestly, because especially considering that, like you said earlier, the entire movie that we see is just Pattinson's point of view.
Yeah. And then
this might just be him just, in an alcoholic stupor,
right?
A fucking fever dream or some shit like this after he's killed this guy on the logging expedition and is feeling the guilt of it and so on. You just don't know.
I mean, to see the Prometheus myth of the punishment being that each day your liver is attacked and then the next day it's fine.
That's very telling of alcoholism.
Very telling of alcoholism. I don't think this is a connection that is normally made with Prometheus. I think this movie may be one of the first. But I think at the end, what it's showing us, the God's eye view, is this is his punishment to constantly
pound his
die
liver.
in this alcoholic stupor, to basically just have his liver be eaten away. And I think it is from the guilt of letting the guy he wanted to have sex with die in that log flume. Like, I think he's trying to escape that guilt and the guilt of having that sexual desire for other men. But he's doing that through alcohol. And the beginning of the movie, when they sit down the first time, like he seems to be, and Pattinson said this about the character, that he took it as the character was in his first moments of sobriety.
So and that's why previously a heavy drinker, and this is his like return back to sobriety.
Yeah, and so that's why he's constantly, not having the drink, and he's tempted and tempted and tempted, and he sees, and this is something that I think most addicts deal with. You get to that point where you feel like, well, I probably could have a drink and it wouldn't be a big deal, and that's the point. The point is that last night, before they're supposed to be picked up, that's the point where he falls to the temptation, and then that's when everything goes crazy, and we can't trust anything past that moment.
Well, that's an interesting thing too that I was wanting to ask you about, is like, how much of the movie is he's crazy? Like, do you think he's crazy when he shows up, or do you think it's something that grows as he's there? It kind of goes back to The Shining, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And again, alcoholism. Like,
yeah, exactly.
He's crazy in a lot of ways, because as an addict, as an alcoholic, as a dependent, he's trying every way he can to avoid all this, like just doing the work. And it seems like he would have complained earlier if he didn't feel like it was a just punishment for whatever he was going through. Like, he just does all the work and lets Willem Dafoe push him around and never says boo. Like, he's fine with it until a certain point when finally he starts drinking, and now he's got a lot to say. Now he's got all sorts of reasons why he's mad at Willem Dafoe, and Willem Dafoe needs to help him, and all these other things. So I don't know, like he is dealing with issues from the first moment we see him.
Yeah, I think so too. And especially like the second time that I watched it, you kind of realize that like he's never really completely glued together. He's always a little bit off, even from the get-go, probably just due to him being, on the lam for murdering this guy and dealing with the guilt of killing him and so on. I don't think that he's ever really got it all together,
Yeah. I think this is okay. So there's a part where Willem Dafoe, this is early on, I think maybe the second night, he says, "What's the terrible part of a sailor's life, ask ye, lad? 'Tis when the work stops. When you're twixt wind and water. Eviler than the devil, boredom makes men to villain, and the water goes quick, lad. The only medicine is drink." Okay, so he's telling him, he's got this like very sort of impassioned way of speaking, and he's telling him, look, if you let yourself get bored, you're gonna go crazy, so you need to drink. But the thing is, everything he tells him, we could easily put together like, okay, if he kills that seabird and the wind changed, he does a few things that go against like sailor superstitions, and everything he tells him could add up to that's what happened.
Yeah.
But it seems more that he is tempting him toward the insanity. He's gaslighting him. Yeah, he's gaslighting him and saying like, oh no, you'll go crazy if you don't drink. Instead of like, if you start drinking, you'll definitely go crazy. Like, and this is the, I mean, it seems from what I've read about addiction and when I've read descriptions of addiction, it seems that there is that voice in your head that comes in and says, like, really, like, you're actually probably going to be worse off if you don't drink. Like, you really, right now, if you had a drink, you'd probably feel a little bit better and you'd be more capable to not have another drink. Like, there's always just that, like, ways of logic your brain is trying to find to get that thing that it's like craving. So that again is what made me think, like, all these times he's talking to him and he's obviously lying. Like, it seems like it's a representation of what his mind is saying to him, and eventually he gives in. And when he does give in, he eventually has his mind on a leash like a dog, because he's given his mind exactly what it wants. So it'll just fucking lead him on a leash, and then he just kills it, because now they're one and the same. And
then he gets his liver eaten for all eternity.
And he gets his liver eaten for all eternity because he's given into his alcoholism.
Wow, man! When you put it that way, that actually makes complete fucking sense.
It does, but it's not. It doesn't explain everything, and that's why I can't, that's why I would say that is a simple reading of the movie. It's a way of putting it into a box and saying this movie's about alcoholism, but it doesn't explain everything that happens in the movie, nor does it really get us at what the nature of Willem Dafoe is. Like, sure, is he a devil? Is he an angel? Is he gnawing addiction, or is he an actual sea god?
Yeah, because there's even those scenes where, like, Pattinson is, like, beating him to death, and he appears as, like, fucking Neptune for a second. Which is interesting, because I think during that scene where he's, beating him to death, essentially, it's like he sees his, again, possibly former gay temptation. He sees the mermaid. He sees Neptune. Yeah. It's like he sees everything that he's trying to conquer. And I mean, even seeing him as Neptune is interesting, because he's essentially killing God at that point.
Yes. It's crazy. What
it's
a
just
moment.
like man's struggle against everything, against himself and everything around him.
Yeah. And I mean, the choice to make it, instead of being a ship on the sea, to make it an island, I think has to do with the difference between, as I said, Prometheus is this representation of creatives in a lot of way, and it has to do in a lot of ways with the way that creatives, artists, are putting themselves out there. They're not like a ship on the sea. They're more like an island, because what they're doing is saying firmly, this is me, this is my voice, this is who I am. And they are surrounded when they're not held up by anything. They're just saying, this is me. And here's my big bright lights. Here's my big booming. Yeah. Here's my big booming foghorn. Look at me. And by doing that, you then get assaulted from all sides. Yes, there are a million benefits to being an artist, to being a creative, but that is the existence of an artist, is being an island in some ways, being this thing that you have to uphold and have to fight against the winds and the waves to maintain.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's a cool way to look at it too. And it's also, probably no coincidence that a lot of creatives end up being addicts and alcoholics, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what led me down that path, was because it was like, I mean, you see that with so many. I mean, just my own experience. I love drinking. It's fun. It kind of helps you shut off your brain.
Absolutely.
It's nice to be able to shut that off. But you also see creatives fall fully into that addiction because they can never shut their brain off, and they just don't want to think about it anymore.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and two, I wonder how deep the gaslighting in this really goes, because with with Defoe immediately establishing his authority on the island, that, you know, you will do absolutely everything I say, even if I ask you to take this entire building apart nail by nail, clean them, then reassemble the whole thing. You are under my authority. The light is mine. You are never to come up here, and you're to listen to every word that I say. Just immediately putting himself in that authority position. And then, like we said earlier, tempting him with everything along the way and saying, you'll go crazy if you don't drink. And then being like, hey, did you know weeks have passed since that boat was supposed to pick us up?
And then,
hey, did you know you chopped up that boat that you just watched me chop up? How much of this is him fucking with him, using his authority position as a god figure?
Yeah.
And how much of it is not? It's so hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, if we just take it as a reality, if we believe this story, then he is fully manipulating him the entire time. And he would then have to be, I would think, a sea god who knows that he can't hurt him, he can't kill him, that anything he does to him is just his whim and not up to Robert Pattinson. So, and
in a lot of ways, isn't that just like the cruel games that Greek and Roman gods would play on humans? You know,
that is exactly,
and even Christian biblical stuff,
exactly,
like the story of Job and stuff. Yeah. These are just like the cool gods.
You know that guy who likes you a lot? I bet I could fuck up his life, and God's like, so he'd still like me.
Yeah, bet you couldn't. It's just fucked up, man. But it's like that's kind of ingrained in every religious myth in history.
Yeah, it is.
Well, not all of them, but a lot of them.
Yeah. Well, I think when you start getting toward the idea of the modern self around the Renaissance, the idea of the individuality and self-desires and desires to be something more, I think that's when we start seeing the Christian God being looked at as this maybe somewhat trickster character, and that's when the devil becomes more prominent, so that they can take some of the trickster elements of God and put it on something that's not supposed to be divine and perfect.
Yeah. Make it the bad guy doing that stuff instead.
Yeah, so like, you read the Old Testament or New Testament and you can see like an imperfect kind of God, but through 1,000 years of reading the same stuff over and over, they found a way to separate the things that they didn't like about the God character and force them onto this devil character that, if you read the Bible, is hard to pick out. I mean, the devil that we know really does come from Milton in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And of course, one of the things that we've absolutely got to talk about here is just the cast and their performances. This is a extremely small cast movie. It's basically just Pattinson, Defoe, the mermaid who has no speaking lines.
Yeah.
Even the two former Lighthouse guys that we see walking off as they walk onto the island, they have no speaking lines.
Yeah,
so
we don't even see their faces.
Yeah, it's these two guys. And what do you think about their performances? I mean, this is one of those deals that obviously we all know and love Willem Dafoe. He's been so many incredible characters. Robert Pattinson has the burden of always being the fucking Twilight guy.
Well, he did before this, I think. I think now that's gone. I
hope so.
I think if you haven't seen this and you still think Robert Pattinson is just a Twilight guy, watch this. He's not.
You might be a redneck.
Yeah. I mean, there are other movies he's done in between that proved that he was more than just the Twilight guy. But this is like a wonderfully amazing performance that's raw and just he put everything into it, and it's amazing. I think so too. Willem Dafoe, I mean, it's a goddamn masterclass in being a crazy sea guy. But he apparently watched The Witch and loved it and emailed Robert Eggers and said, like, love The Witch. I'd like to be in anything you do in the future. Yep.
Oh, that's awesome.
Pattinson was cast, but Willem Dafoe was just like, oh, Willem Dafoe wants to be in my movie? Let's write a Willem Dafoe part.
Yeah, let's put him in here, man.
Yeah,
it's one of those things, man, that like we talked about whenever we did Twilight as a wildcard episode, in my head, Robert Pattinson was, of course, Twilight guy. Because I'd seen that movie and been like, man, he's fucking horrible in here. And then I read the book and I was like, oh, he had nothing to work with.
Yeah, it wasn't his
Anybody
fault.
would have been horrible.
Yeah, and somebody had to get that paycheck, and Robert Pattinson was very like broke at the time.
Yeah.
So I don't get begrudging actors roles. I don't
Hell
get
no.
it. It would be like if you found out that Michael Keaton worked at McDonald's and you said, well, he's not a good Batman then. Like,
Batman would never work at McDonald's.
yeah, like what the fuck are you talking about? Like, you need the job. I guarantee you, from knowing a bunch of actors who literally would take anything they could, if you got offered the role of Edward Cullen, you're not going to turn it down because you don't want people to remember you as Edward Cullen, because you want people to remember you as having food and not dying on the street.
That's a much better way to be remembered, I think.
Yeah. So it's ridiculous. I mean, it makes sense if you hear Will Smith took some ridiculous part. It's like, he doesn't need the money. What is he doing this for? But even then, maybe he wanted to do it. That's up to him. But when a young actor takes one of those roles, let's give them some room to grow. Let's let them expand.
Yeah, for sure, man. And he absolutely crushes in this movie. Again, it's that thing where it kind of gives him a little bit of help that I went in with low expectations, because literally the last thing I watched with him in it was fucking Twilight. Of course, I know he's a way better actor than what he portrayed in that movie. But I still went into it with low expectations, and he crushed it. But then, dude, like, Willem Dafoe has that unfortunate position of the fact that we all know that he's incredible. So it's like, whenever he knocks it out of the park, you're like, well, obviously he did. Yeah. Whenever you have that certain kind of pedigree, excellence can almost kind of be downplayed, right?
Yeah, it could. And that's true. I mean, because he's amazing in this. Like, he performed, like, that curse... When he curses him...
Oh, you mean when he cuts the best WWF promo of all time?
Yeah. Listen here, Tommy.
Neptune's gonna drag you down to the depths where your bones will rot. Dude, he just goes and goes and goes and doesn't blink.
Unblinking shot. Dude. It is amazing.
And don't you love, too, how even during those like long-ass takes of him just like talking shit, the camera, which we'll talk about the camera work in a second too, the camera is like kind of out of focus on him a lot of times during that speech, but they're like, this is so electric, you won't give a fuck.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that a couple times. And that probably had to do with the lenses you were talking about earlier. Like, they had some difficulty working with those lenses and getting the lighting right and stuff to work with the film and things that they were using. So... yeah, I mean, if something was a little bit out of focus or whatever and it hit right, what does it matter? That actually is more, that fits more into the silent film aesthetic of it, because
that's true. They hadn't perfected it at that time.
Yeah, exactly. I want to, because we're talking about Willem Dafoe, I just want to talk about some of the great lines that he says. Oh, man.
Dude, there's so much of this shit that is like entering my everyday vocabulary immediately. The next time I take a pull of something that's just good and strong and awesome, you can goddamn well bet I'm looking up to the skies and screaming monkey pump. You goddamn
monkey pump. I don't know if he improvised that or not, but
I have no idea.
It was so profound to me. Because like a little bit after that, we see Robert Pattinson like going crazy. And he starts like laughing and clapping, and he's doing it like a chimp, like the way he's laughing. He's like showing his teeth and like head back, and like it's so crazy, like just so perfect. But I really loved after, he says bad luck to kill a seabird, and Robert Pattinson's like, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, no, bad luck, and he like yells at him. And after that, he's like,
shit out of him.
Yeah, and then after that, he's like, pay me no mind, lad, none. I feel that,
he's got his like
time.
Head down and he looks like a beaten dog.
Yeah, I feel that all the time, because like if I lose my temper, I want the people to know I just lost my temper on. Like, that was all about me. That's not about you. Pay me no mind.
Yeah, yeah,
I get it. I wish I would just memorize that fucking curse. It's amazing.
I want to be able to lay that down on a motherfucker, just like fucking.
Yeah.
Sam Jackson does with that Bible verse in Pulp Fiction. I want to have that on deck just to lay down some cold ass medieval shit on somebody whenever I need to.
Whenever he's talking to him about the floors not being clean.
Yeah.
Unwiped, unwashed, and disdained. I love that. I am now going to refer to every dirty thing as that. That is amazing.
You smell of shit? This place is in disarray.
That's a queer way to wear your shoes.
Dude.
That line
so
is
much
interesting.
dialogue is gold.
That is so interesting because that's, okay, we were talking about the knife being phallic, and he's like got the knife like pointed at him in his sleep, and then he wakes up, looks over, and then says, queer way to wear your shoes. And it's like, what the fuck is he talking about? That is the strangest response to waking up to somebody having a knife at your throat.
Right. You know?
But it's amazing. Like he also says, and this is pure poetry right here. He says, now I'm a wiki, and a wiki I is. It's just this like great reflective language. And it also does this indication of like he is his profession, but he's like the typification of his profession. Like, not only is he a wiki, but he is the wiki, like what a wiki is.
Yeah. And dude, isn't so much of the dialogue just downright Shakespearean? Just in the way that they choose the weirdest phrases to say things. Like you were pointing out earlier, that phrase where, you know, all that Willem Dafoe wants is to be able to like light his pipe or his cigarette or whatever.
Oh my god, yeah. That is genius. I really love, because so this is after they've had that big storm and the cabin is flooded. And
they're then living punk rock as hell, dude. Like, they wake up and this fucking place is in shambles.
Yeah.
He pisses in a pot that's floating in the water.
Yeah.
Pukes in the water, then kneels in it. It's SLC punk as fuck, man. Punk rock in this movie.
So, he grabs his pipe and, he's looking around for something to light it. And he says, fiery pit. Ain't there no justice left in this world? And that is so genius, because what he is saying is fiery pit, as in hell. Ain't there no justice left in this world? Again, he's talking about hell, but the reason he's saying that is to indicate he needs fire.
Exactly. Yeah, to conjure up the imagery of a fiery place.
So Shakespearean. It's it's just perfectly poetic and wonderful. And it's also, that's an interesting moment, because if we're saying Robert Pattinson is our Prometheus, he gives him fire, which is part of the like Zeus, Prometheus, man intertangling, where this whole like he has this fire, and if we're considering this to be a god as well, when does Prometheus ever steal fire and give it to humanity? Like, if the Prometheus myth fits, and it has to fit in some way, because the ending is clearly Prometheus. Like, is this the representation? Are we saying, I guess, like, is it possible Willem Dafoe is a representation of humanity? Is this when he's bringing fire to humanity? Is this when his punishment is now laid out?
Well, you also picked up on some things about Robert Pattinson's character handling fire and handling light that I didn't notice. This is fascinating to me.
He can't keep anything lit. He can't keep his cigarette lit. When he lights a match, it doesn't burn down to his fingers. It just burns out halfway through. Like,
he lights Defoe's pipe. Defoe can handle fire and light with his godlike status, but Pattinson can't handle it.
He just can't handle it. He can't keep it lit. So it's a constant reminder that if he were the lighthouse keeper, he could not keep the lighthouse lit.
Wow. That's cool. And then too, like at the very end, dude, whenever he goes up there and looks into the light and the screaming is all distorted and he's got the light in his eyes. Oh my God. It's like fucking black metal to me or something.
Yes.
It's all just an assault on your senses. Like the sound is so harsh The light is so bright. It's getting so loud. It's fucking black metal, dude.
Yes.
And what about that dream that he has where he's like on the ground and Defoe is positioned above him and he's naked and in a very muscular pose and his eyes are shining on him like the light of the lighthouse.
Okay,
Fuck,
yeah.
man, that imagery is sick.
That is amazing. Yeah, that's seriously probably one of the best images in the entire movie because it just conveys so much, but is still so enigmatic. I'm not positive what they were getting at. What I was thinking they were getting at was that in his mind, at least, Willem Dafoe wasn't just the keeper of the light, but he was the light.
Mm-hmm.
And
or you could also use it as a way to say that a lighthouse is the thing that is illuminating everything about you. It could be illuminating all of your sins, your guilt, your inner monologue, whatever it is. Like you're seeing through him, you know?
Yes. Yeah. And I don't know, man. That's just like, it was like a painting. Like it looks gorgeous. Absolutely wonderful moment.
And I'll say another thing about the characters too. In addition to their incredible portrayals of this growing madness and suspicion and all this multi-layered dramatic shit, man alive, the humorous elements in this movie are extremely fantastic. There's not a lot of them.
But they're great. Yeah.
After that huge, Ultimate Warrior promo speech that Defoe gives, like cursing him, cursing Pattinson, that is, Pattinson goes, "All right, have it your way then."
Yeah.
Just like the dumbest, shortest response ever to this gigantic dramatic speech that was just given. God, it cracks me up. And then, of course, later they're having that argument about, like, he doesn't like Defoe's cooking. It is like, "You like my lobster? Say it." It's so dryly, weirdly funny at times.
It is, because it's so strange and outrageous, like that this man who is he seems to be this hardened man, but he's really hurt by the idea that he doesn't like his food.
Yeah, well, and again, that's kind of the Hellenistic thing. It's like you prescribe a god an attribute like that, like a human would be insulted about that kind of thing, Yeah, I think that kind of ties into that as well.
And it also works if he's Neptune, that it's not only he's cooked the lobster, but it is his lobster. It is of his domain. You don't even appreciate the things I've given you. Like,
the gifts from the sea.
Yeah, there's a good bit going on with that. I think. You're right. All right, have it your way then. I do like your cooking. But the thing is, he never said he didn't like his cooking.
No,
he was just being accused of it vehemently. So it's like that response is so perfect because it's like, I don't actually dislike your cooking, but I'll let you feel like you won this one. All right,
have it your way then. Yeah, the cabin fever aspect of this and several other things about it definitely did also remind me of, my all-time favorite flick, which is The Shining, of course.
Yeah.
And especially the second time I watched it, I picked up on more of this stuff when you've got Willem Dafoe towards the end of the movie chasing Robert Pattinson with an axe while limping. Mm-hmm. Like, some of that imagery is straight out of whenever you've got Jack Torrance chasing Danny out into the hedge maze at the end of The Shining.
For sure.
The way he's holding the axe, the way the camera is on his back, is straight up exactly like that. But then another thing, too, that was even more obvious to me that plays into some of the soundtrack stuff, that scene where Pattinson thinks that he's, like, disposed of Defoe, and then Defoe shows back up with the axe. The soundtrack is doing this bum, 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 bum kind of thing, just like the soundtrack in The Shining does, like whenever Wendy is walking through the house and stuff. And it's very offbeat for the rest of the soundtrack. That's not a theme that's been in there before, but they chose that exact time to do it. It's the same soundtrack bump that happens whenever Jack Torrance axes Scatman Crothers. It's the same soundtrack bump. I mean, it's not literally the same sample, but it's the exact same theme.
Yeah. That's interesting, because I do think that another element of The Shining that is in there that is kind of informing my reading that maybe it's all in his imagination is that idea that, like, maybe this is like his Lloyd, that Willem Dafoe is whatever Lloyd was supposed to represent. Or maybe Willem Dafoe is his, old caretaker. What was his name? Crap,
Grady.
Mr. Grady. Yeah, yeah. He's maybe Mr. Grady. There are a number of ways of looking at it, but it really does get like sort of cemented that possibility that he is when he says himself, Willem Dafoe, "I'm probably a figment of your imagination.
Oh,
this
yeah,
rock
dude,
is a figment of your imagination too."
Yeah.
Like,
and again, that's like ultimate gaslighting. He's like, maybe this is all in your fucking head.
Maybe it's all in your head, but then it's like also if he is telling truths, then maybe he's like that's his brain like trying to shake him out of it. Like, this isn't real. But it's also like that would come across as gaslighting if you were in a certain mind state. So like, how much of what he's doing is gaslighting and how much is it him telling the truth and we're just not getting to see it from his perspective?
Yeah, dude.
It's all over the place. It's hard to figure out. It's
infinitely watchable for that reason, because you could sit back and watch it with so many different expectations and it would still make sense. Like, you could watch it as this is one guy dealing with his guilt. You could watch it as this is Prometheus. You could watch it as this is man and God.
Yeah.
There's so many ways to watch it, and they all make sense, actually.
It's true. They do. They all make sense. I think if somebody were to watch this and have trouble making sense of it, I entirely understand. If someone were to watch this and say there's no sense to be made, you're way off.
Yeah. If you watch this and think, oh, it didn't mean anything, I think that you're way off. Yeah, you're right, though. It's like, this is such a slow burn, introspective, weird fucking movie that I get it. Like, if you're a horror fan that loves Freddy and Jason exclusively, maybe
this is not
you don't like this.
Yeah.
And I get it.
I think we've put off talking about the Oedipal stuff, and we should talk about the psychoanalysis bits in here. But I don't want to go too far into them because one, I know psychoanalysis. It is a definite valid way of reading things because people have read Jung and read Freud, and they are writing with that in mind. Though I don't love the framework of Freud and Jung. It's really like man-centric, and kind of treats women as not having many motivations. But in this case, we're definitely working, because Egger said he was working from like Jungian psychology and things. So we're dealing with possibly Oedipal situation, but the problem there is that the Oedipal complex is the desire to kill the father in order to obtain the mother. And there's no mother here, is there?
Yeah, no.
Unless we say the sea is the mother,
or the light itself,
or the light. Yeah, that could work. Yeah, the light could be the mother, and he's monopolizing access to the mother. So he kills him to get him. Yeah, that works perfectly.
Isn't that cool too? Considering so much of the framework that we found in The Witch was dealing with the mother-daughter relationships in that movie, and this is kind of about son and father,
son.
Whether that be father God or father, you know?
Yeah, it's as I was saying, like I think the Witch is this really good sort of feminist message that comes from a male perspective, but I think he did a good job. That would be, of course, up to any women listening to determine if he did a good job of representing women. But it's also because he was so disconnected from it that maybe he was able to make a clearer, more concise narrative, whereas with this, every man is connected to that father-son dynamic, whether it be father not being there, or constant clashes with the father, or just father worship, seeing your father as this great guy and really wanting to be like him. Like, any one of those different ways of son-father relationships affects the way you deal with masculinity, and specifically can affect how toxic your level of masculinity is. It can get very toxic if, say, you have this complete disconnect from your father, where you feel as though all men are maybe as detached or what am I trying to say? Like
uncaring,
uncaring as this father who left you. Or, like you can see how that can lead to toxic masculinity. Though the same can happen in the hero worship, where a son sees his father as this infallible figure, and so whatever he does is right, and his father may in fact be absolutely terrible and horrendous. I mean, you could probably look at maybe one of the Trump boys and see that going on.
Well, and also too, I think that this also head-on deals with and again, it could be the paradigm of a man and his God, or a boy and his father figure, or a man and any authority figure,
right?
Of the resentment that comes with someone above you telling you that they are in absolute power and that you have to obey every single word that they ever do. It's kind of in man's nature to rebel against that, whether that be against your dad or your God or whoever.
Yes.
This movie deals with that very, very head on.
Yeah, as The Witch did. I mean, The Witch was about rebellion against the patriarchy. Like this again, it may still have that same sort of theme of rebellion against the patriarchy, where this is absolute authority that has all control, and you just want to be able to go up to the top of the lighthouse, like, and he won't let you. Like, if he's not the god Neptune, and if he does exist and he's just gaslighting him, like, there's nothing to the lighthouse. Like, there's nothing about it that is particularly special. Like, if we eliminate all the mythology possibilities and things, the only thing about the lighthouse is special is that it is off access. Which is, I mean, could be said to be true about many different things that are considered sacred in religion, is that the thing that makes them sacred is that no one has access to them except for very few people.
Yeah.
But it's not special or magical, or it's just it maintains this magical aura because you're unable to see it.
Right.
So
the
gaslighting that's going on, and I it wasn't until I really thought about it that I was like, gaslighting is what their job is.
That's true. Yeah, they're lighting gas.
So for the psychological gaslighting to be occurring while they're performing their job, which is gaslighting, it's a real interesting way of reading it. Like, because he is a wiki, and a wiki he is, as he says, like, is he saying, like, I gaslight and I gaslight? Like,
I exist for this. This is my entire existence.
Yeah.
Huh.
So
yeah,
then
that's interesting.
Then he's just an asshole. Like, in that reading, it's about two people and one of them is an asshole.
He's an absentee landlord.
Can't go without a devil's advocate quote.
Of course not. No, I wouldn't dare, man.
We should also talk about a Jungian psychology about, like, you know, the shadow and things like that. I think it could easily be seen as this is a growing experience where he is, you know, stepping through his shadow and you know, really confronting all of his demons and coming out the other side a changed person, like a completely new and rejuvenated individual.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think the ending gives us that. So I don't know what in particular Eggers was looking at from Jung, though there's obviously psychoanalytic stuff going on. I would like to investigate that a little bit more. I just didn't have the time.
Yeah, there's a lot of the stuff in here that I also would like to do a little bit more deep diving into. I feel like this is one of those ones that we could probably prep for 3 or 4 weeks.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
Before we really come down to, like, you know what I think about this movie? You know? I feel like there's a lot that could be said about this flick. The same with The Witch, the same with The Shining, the same with a lot of my favorite movies ever.
Yeah.
And I love how Eggers is continuing through his career to explore some of the themes that he talked about in The Witch, whether that be man versus God, man versus nature, children versus their parents.
Yeah.
There's so many things that you could look at. The same way that Jordan Peele is exploring societal and racial issues in his movie, Eggers is tackling these things kind of over and over, and I really, really enjoy that, and I hope that that's not something that he ceases to do. I cannot wait to see what he does next, because I feel like...
I imagine after these two movies, he can do whatever he wants, right?
Yeah, because like to me, even though Us was a little bit of a sophomore letdown for me from Peele, like this to me is like, oh yeah, he's continuing his momentum that he had with The Witch.
And this movie made money. Like,
oh yeah?
That, I mean, when you're talking about art movies that are really meant to win awards mostly, for this movie to go to be a $4 million budget and to make $18 million, like it made enough that of course you'd let him make another one. Like, it's no problem. We'll give you a few $1 million. You give us back more than that. That's great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah,
like,
no doubt, man.
It's good to see that, though, because that means he gets to keep working in that sphere. I mean, I'm sure there are people out there who want him to do some book adaptation or work in some franchise or whatever, but I'd like to see him just keep doing his thing.
Me too.
Prefer to just get his perspective. It's pretty amazing and interesting each time, so I want to see more of that.
Yeah, you and me both, man. And another thing too that I'll say kind of carried over from The Witch into this movie is the absolutely stunning aesthetic of the flick. Both movies are incredible and organic looking and natural looking, and this movie, even though it's just black and white, is absolutely stunning. Every moment of this movie, I really feel like you could just take a screenshot and hang it on the wall. Every moment of this movie looks like a fucking photograph.
And the use of the format, like, to decide to go with the 1.19 to 1 ratio, like basically pretty much a square. Yeah, like to decide to go with that, it when you're not using it because it's all you have, you're making a very conscious choice. And what he's doing is showing us how claustrophobic it is. He's putting it in black and white, but it's almost all shades of gray. Like, he's using the format and the black and white aesthetic to make points about the movie. It's not just like, oh, wouldn't this look pretty? It really shows us how claustrophobic everything is, how rigid everything is, because it has to fit in that small little box. Every single thing they do has to fit into that. So
which isn't that cool too, considering how much The Witch relied on gigantic, wide shots to dwarf the humans. Like those scenes where we see, the humans walking into the woods and just these towering trees that are swaying. Yeah, and the humans are absolutely dwarfed by nature. In this movie, it's the complete opposite. All the shots are very tight and very close. That way you get as close to the humanity as you can. You know?
Yeah. I love it. I mean, honestly, I don't have much more to say, though I have a million things to say. There's only one thing I would say that I forgot when I was talking about influences is this was Max Egger's attempt at finishing Poe's last work, The Lighthouse.
Really?
Yeah. He really couldn't do it, and then it eventually evolved into something different when he and Robert Eggers started working together on it. So I read that last bit. I had never read it before, but I knew it wasn't much, and it really isn't. It's about a lighthouse keeper who is staying alone in the lighthouse, and there's like 3 journal entries, and basically the first one is like, hey, this is the setup. The second one is like, it's really nice being alone, and the third one's like, I really like being alone, and then it's over. So there wasn't much to work off of there, and in fact, some people have even argued that the story might be the end of the story. Is that like the whole story is this guy goes, and when he's writing about his experience, he's talking about how much he likes being alone, and then by the 4th day he kills himself. But
Jesus.
But it's unlikely. It's likely he had a story in mind and didn't get to finish it. But yeah, that attempt is interesting to take someone's last work and try to finish it. Like, you know, people have done it. Like Tolkien's son, didn't he finish the Silmarillion, right?
Right.
Yeah, and like we've had others come along and try to, you know, finish an author's last work, and it always, to me, like, you know, Steven Spielberg's AI, that was supposed to be Kubrick's movie. Like, it always seems to me like I get the desire and I get the want, but like I like the idea of taking what they were working with and making it your own thing. Like what happened with this, like,
sure.
Make it your own thing. Don't think of the way they would have finished it, because they aren't finishing it.
It'll just turn out feeling like an impersonation.
Exactly. Yeah. You're finishing it. Yeah.
That makes sense to me, man.
Other than that, I got nothing. I'm done.
You know, the only other thing I was going to say as far as some of the influence aesthetically from this movie is from a lot of the early black and white photographers and stuff that were around at this time. I mean, this movie doesn't really follow the cinematic trends that we saw from this time period, because they were essentially trying to film it as though you were watching a play from the crowd's perspective. It was a lot of still camera. They didn't have the technology to move a fucking camera back then and keep it in focus. You know?
Were gigantic. So yeah, they were just in one place.
Yeah.
It's also rare today for us to actually even be able to see what the film looked like when they first like processed it and first showed it to people. Like, maybe it was a bit more like clear and vibrant. So like, yeah, he really couldn't work off of what 1920s aesthetic that he was kind of going for, but he could work off of the photography of the 1890s and that era, which is when it's set, and he really sort of nails that feeling you get from a lot of those, like especially like the silver prints. Like,
silver gelatin prints.
He really kind of captures that feel.
Oh yeah, and if you want to see more of that, my wife, who went to school for the photography and making the pizza, she showed me a couple of photographers that I think definitely influenced the aesthetic of this flick. Number one being this guy Louis Hine, Hine.
Okay.
Check out some of his stuff. You'll look at it and feel very much the same way that we did whenever you told me about that photographer that influenced It Follows.
Oh, and It Follows, yeah.
Yeah, where you look at that and it's like, are these not just shots from It Follows? Louis Hine's stuff looks a lot like this, and there's a couple others she pointed out, like Robert Frank and Dorothea Lange.
Yeah, Lange is...
L-A-N-G-E?
Yeah, Dorothea Lange was the one I thought of, but yeah, I'm looking at Louis Hine right now, and yes.
Looks like it, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of classical photography influence and stuff that went into this too, because the movie is just goddamn gorgeous. It is an incredible looking movie. And between that, the performances, the deeper ways you can look at this flick in terms of how it relates to myth and religion and stuff like this, I think is just incredible. I think this is an amazing movie. It's not easy to watch. It's not a fun watch. Like,
no,
it's not a comfort food movie by any means.
And as I said, he doesn't start drinking until 40-something minutes into the movie, and that's when all the craziness happens. So
yeah, that's when the shit starts hitting the fan.
40 minutes leading up to that is a lot of just conversations and shots of him jerking off, and like you don't get a whole lot up to that point, though it's gorgeous and it's necessary and builds an awesome tension, but it's not a fast watch and it's not an easy watch.
And it's kind of hard to even pigeonhole it as just horror exactly.
That is true. Yeah.
You pointed out earlier, it feels more like Victorian ghost story horror than it does like a horror movie.
Yeah, it's way closer to like a Henry James turn of the screw type of thing, where you're really being led on in these dark moments, and you're being primed to be ready for something to happen, but it doesn't necessarily have to happen ever. Like,
right, it's the growing sense of dread more than anything that keeps you on edge.
Yeah, but in this case, something does happen. A lot of something. But it does. It does seem to share more with that. Like, Honestly, another Melville book that I've recommended before, Pierre. Like, it reminds me a lot of it, which is a sort of his almost satirical take on a gothic romance. So it has that romance quality and sort of that like late Victorian era ghost story quality. It is a horror movie, but in a more classical sense of horror than what we would commonly recognize as horror today.
Yeah, I think so too, man. I think it's an incredible movie. I will watch this many, many, many times and probably find new things in it every time and talk about them on later episodes of the show. Yeah, this movie, like I said, between the look, the performances, the way that it so encapsulates the cabin fever that happens when you are stuck in one location with one other person that you maybe don't even necessarily like the company of, especially in these conditions, man. And the fact is, they filmed these scenes and stuff in actual weather conditions most of the time. These actors were in sheer misery.
Yeah, they weren't
making
happy.
this movie. No, it couldn't have been easy.
And Robert Pattinson further wasn't happy because of the way they had to shoot. They had to rehearse, and that's not his acting style. Willem Dafoe comes from theater, so he's really used to rehearsing. But for Robert Pattinson, it was like, very difficult to get into that new mindset. So Robert Eggers said in an interview I read that he wasn't trying to do anything Kubrickian, but that it did serve to make the character more believable because he is actually miserable.
Well, I mean, that's the same shit we talked about on Misery, isn't it?
Yep. Yes, same exact issue. Yeah, where two people have different acting style, and it makes the one who's supposed to be miserable.
Yeah, dude. So I absolutely appreciate the amount of commitment that the actors put into it, the amount of research and accuracy that Eggers put into writing this thing. Well, both Eggers, that is.
Yeah.
And again, that feeling that you get in this, where you're just slowly being driven insane by the person that you're stuck with. Every little mannerism that they have just so reminds me of being on tour. Dude, that scene like towards the end of the movie where Pattinson is like just going completely overboard and just pissed off as fuck about Defoe's farts. He's like, "You're fucking farts." Like, he's just coming unglued.
Like hot onions fucked a farmyard shithouse.
Great dialogue. Great fucking dialogue.
Great.
That is exactly what it's like when you're on tour and you're in a van with somebody, 12 hours a day, and then you play a half-hour set, and then you're back in a van for 12 hours. Like, that's the kind of shit that actually drives you insane in cabin fever, is those little tiny things that the other people do that just drive you nuts over a long enough time span. They're not even a big deal, but again, if that's all that you're stuck with, it'll drive you insane. This movie nails it.
Yeah, you need that space. You need to be able to just separate because, every little thing, even the things that you like about a person, can turn. Like, now you hate
so
it
fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, this movie to me is incredible. Like I said, I'll watch it many more times. Not a fun watch, but for me, I think I'm gonna say that this is like a 9.5 out of 10 for me. I think it's fucking incredible.
That's exactly where I was gonna rate it. I think I probably gave the Witch a 10. Not positive on that.
I think I did too.
And
I do like
still
The Witch
think
better.
I still think The Witch is better. I think it's more comprehensible. It's more enjoyable as a watch.
Yeah, I think so.
But it's not far off. He's really nailing it. So if you don't suffer from a sophomore slump in any recognizable quality, like if your first is a 10 and your second is a 9.5, like, where do you go from there? I'm just excited to see what he does next.
Yeah, this is totally a Van Halen 2 or a Pinkerton affair for me. Follows
finally
up
got that
part
Pinkerton
1
in there.
Yeah, finally, right? Well, next week on the show, we're going to be talking about another one from last year. Again, why not use this time where we're stuck inside watching flicks and stuff to catch up on
movies.
All the cool stuff that we missed on last year. And we're going to talk about one that's definitely a little bit more, I anticipate, lighthearted and simple and face value than a movie like this was.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about Crawl next week.
Yeah.
Kind of a creature feature, man. I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, and it just seemed like the perfect palate cleanser after the Lighthouse, because I've heard that it's just dumb fun. I am interested. Get to see some gators.
Dude, I'm telling you, though, we're going to get on the show next week, and you're going to be like, man, I've just been researching crocodile psychology papers all week and shit. You're going to find more to it than you think. I bet. I anticipate this.
That's what's going to happen. Actually, next week's a 4-hour episode where I dissect Crawl.
Yeah, the symbol of the crocodile. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I'll look forward to checking this out. I've actually never even seen a trailer for this, but I haven't either. It's simple,
I've just
dumb
heard
fun.
About it. Yeah, I have no idea other than I know that there's a hurricane and gators involved. So
yeah, dude. And if anybody listens to the show, they know my taste range from the stuff like The Lighthouse that can be these super deep dive, really, really big, hard to understand movies, or I like stuff that's just fucking dumb and people getting murdered for no reason. So I might really like this movie.
Yeah, this might be the Wraith situation where you love it and I hate it.
Either way, what bliss, right?
Yeah, for real.
Well, in the meantime, you guys can go online, go on iTunes or whatever, rate and review this podcast. It really, really does help us out a ton. So if you've got a second and you can go on iTunes and make a review and rate the show, helps us out a ton. Also, at the end of your review, be sure to leave a question that we will answer on a future FAQ section of the Preview Palace. Ask us a question about anything, and we shall answer it.
Yeah, get us some. Hey, maybe we do that next week with Crawl. Who knows?
Could be that, man. Could be that. They can follow us on social media also.
They can. At Dead Lovely Pod on Twitter and Instagram. We're also on Facebook, facebook.com/Dead and Lovely, youtube.com/Dead and Lovely. We're working on a video idea. We're going to probably try to get some more YouTube videos out.
Yeah.
Because we got time. Yeah. Also, head on over to patreon.com/Dead and Lovely. Become a patron.
Show some
use
support.
your money to do things like pay for hosting and all sorts of other things. We're gonna have more merch coming out because we hit our first goal on Patreon.
Woo!
But I don't want to be mailing people merch right now because
my
wife works on the COVID floor at the hospital. So I'm a little worried about that pushing out. So we'll wait on what we were gonna do was beer koozies. So
let's just wait a minute. Let's wait till this all blows over. We'll head down to the pub and have a pint.
But head on over there to patreon.com. If you become a $5 patron, you get to throw a submission into the I don't know what we use anymore. Last time I used a Dia de los Muertos bowl. And
cool.
Then we will randomly select a movie title and then cover that movie. And in fact, whatever we do after Crawl will be a Patreon movie. So get in there.
Get your pick in now.
Get your pick in now.
That's right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. I hope that everybody is staying happy and healthy and sane in these trying times and watching some good movies. Be sure to go over there on the Facebook group. Tell us what you guys thought about The Lighthouse. And tell us about whatever else you guys have been catching while you've been streaming some stuff, because we're always looking for recommendations of things to check out and pass the time.
Gotten a lot of good recommendations lately.
Hell yeah, we have. Yeah. That's absolutely right, man. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. Like I said, stay healthy, wash your damn hands and your ass. Thanks for checking out this show. You guys have been fantastic. We've been Dead and Lovely, and we'll be catching you guys next week. Bye. Now, I know I've mentioned on the show before that Edison's original design for the telephone was that you would answer it by saying the nautical term, ahoy.
Yeah, ahoy hoy.
And this movie just definitely made me think about that even more and think about just how wonderful it would make even ordinary everyday phone calls. Like, could you imagine, like, you're hungry and you make a phone call and it's, ahoy, this is Domino's.
Yes,
Isn't
I can
that
imagine
so
that.
much better?
And life would be, it would be just a minuscule tidge better, but it definitely would improve life.
Ahoy, this is 911. What's your emergency? Like, I would just laugh and then tell them, "Oh, I'm having a heart attack." It's obviously better.
Yeah, so you're already a little bit more relaxed. I'm thinking actually now, like, the tiny percentage that it would improve life is probably enough to have at least saved one person's life, so we should probably do it.
Laughter is the best medicine.
There we go. I mean, there's so many things in public schools that I never understood, but the transition from blackboard to whiteboard still doesn't make sense to me. Because, like, chalk is so cheap, and then the markers for the whiteboard aren't, and then they don't provide them to teachers. What the fuck?
You think you should start a school supply podcast called Chalk is Cheap?
Yes. Yeah, I do. And I'm gonna right now.
Good idea.
Let me go look that up. Chalk is cheap.
Chalk is cheap. I like it. I think it's very catchy.